Chapter 445. Killing had always been a last resort, not the best way. Saints disdain to do it. What a good child. Get up quickly, let me take a good look. With a plan in mind, Nuwa walked to Chang. Yi sighed and gently helped her up with a smile. After that, Nuwa carefully sized up Chang. Yi's face for a while and couldn't help but praise. What a beautiful girl. The beauty of the moon goddess was naturally the best in the primordial world. Moreover, Wang Shu had gone through a lot. Although she was colder than Shihi, she had a more pitiful temperament. Her beauty seemed to be even more outstanding. Even Nuwa felt pity when she saw her. Of course, this didn't mean that Nuwa and other goddesses couldn't compare to Wang Shu in terms of beauty. It was just that their temperaments were different in the eyes of different people. Khanate god-fiends were the most perfect creatures in the primordial world. They were born with the will of heaven and earth. They were the appearance of Tao, the manifestation of Tao in the human world. On the outside, they were naturally handsome men and beautiful women. However, each Tao had its own attributes, causing their personalities and temperaments to be different. Beauty and ugliness were born because of this. After all, in the case of having the same appearance, temperament became the only plus point. Goddess, you flatter me. Chang Yi replied with some fear. Being treated so kindly by Nuwa, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. It was because the current her was not the ancient moon goddess Wang Shu, but the human girl Chang Yi, facing the creator of the human race, the supreme saint of the primordial world. It would be strange if she wasn't nervous. All right, don't be nervous. Do you think I'll eat you? Seeing the existence of the primordial world acting so cautiously in front of her, Nuwa found it amusing and couldn't help but make a joke. Goddess. Nuwa's behavior made Chang Yi even more nervous. She called out in a low voice and couldn't say anything. Nuwa chuckled twice. She also knew the principle of stopping before going too far. Otherwise, when Wang Shu returned and remembered that she had teased her, it would be inevitable that there would be another karma. Thinking up to this point, Nuwa adjusted her expression and returned to her previous serious appearance. Then, she began to talk to Chang Yi about serious matters. The human race wants to make you empress and marry Feng Zichen. That's why I brought you here to ask for my opinion. As for you, I am extremely satisfied. Therefore, I will not object to this matter. Now it's up to you. If you agree, I will order the human race to prepare for your marriage. If you don't agree, I will take you as my disciple. From then on, you will reside in Empress Wa's palace and sever your ties with the mortal world. Nuwa's idea was very good. If this marriage didn't work out, she would take Chang Yi as her disciple. She could also end the karma for Fushi. However, in this way, it would be hard to avoid a direct confrontation with Dijun, which would also be a big problem. In any case, it would not be as good as getting married. The protection of the human race was not just for show. If Wang Shu became the protagonist of the human marriage, Dijun would have to consider carefully if the demon race could withstand the backlash of the human race. However, although Nuwa's heart was more focused on the human marriage, she would not force Chang Yi. Instead, she would let her make her own choice. As a saint, she still had this little bit of breadth of mind. Yes, Chang Yi is willing to marry your majesty. Nuwa's straightforward question made Chang Yi's face turn red with embarrassment. However, she still gently nodded her head and replied as if she was mumbling. As a woman, it was already a great courage for Chang Yi to say such shameful words. To ask her to say it out loud was a little difficult. However, although the voice was soft, it was enough to express Chang Yi's intentions. This made Nuwa heave a sigh of relief. She also did not want to fall out with Dijun directly. However, Nuwa did not know that ever since Dongyun picked up Chang Yi, she had made up her mind to cultivate her to be the empress of the human race. Therefore, in order to prevent any unforeseen events from happening, Dongyun had been instilling in Chang Yi the concept that she was Feng Zichen's future wife in addition to teaching her etiquette when she was young. Over time, her heart was naturally tied to Feng Zichen. Therefore, in the face of Nua's inquiry, how could Chang'e not agree? Good, good, good. Zichen must have accumulated a lot of good fortune to be able to receive your assistance. Feeling happy, Nua took off a hairpin from her head and personally put it on Chang'e's head. This hairpin was pure gold in color. It was shaped like a phoenix spreading its wings and about to fly. Therefore, it was named the Pure Gold Phoenix Hairpin. It was a superior grade innate spirit treasure and was extremely extraordinary. Once activated, it could transform into a pure gold phoenix to fight against enemies. It could spit out nirvana heavenly flames and had the ability to destroy all things. A treasure bestowed by a saint was naturally no small matter. As soon as Chang'e's spiritual sense came into contact with the pure gold phoenix hairpin, her true spirit imprint was automatically imprinted on it, and she had preliminary control of this treasure. If she refined it for another 100 years, she would be able to completely control this treasure. It was just like a lifelong spirit treasure. As Chang'e refined the pure gold phoenix hairpin, the origin and use of it spontaneously appeared in her mind. Thank you, Empress. Knowing the preciousness of this treasure, Chang'e hurriedly thanked her. You're welcome. You're about to become the Empress of the human race. If you don't have a treasure with you, won't you be looked down upon by outsiders? Nua gave Chang'e a treasure, and it was her personal treasure. Of course, her intention was not simple. Firstly, it was to express her love for her. Secondly, it was to tell others that Chang'e was not someone without a background. There was a saint standing behind her. Thirdly, it was to hide Chang'e's true identity. If the marriage was successful, it would definitely shock the entire primordial world. It was unknown how many people would be attracted. In this way, it would be difficult to hide Chang'e's identity. Therefore, Nua added insurance for her in advance. The pure gold phoenix hairpin hid a strand of her spiritual sense. If someone deduced Chang'e's origin, that strand of spiritual sense would erupt and deduce the endless power of creation, weaving a new identity for Chang'e, an innate god-fiend born from Nua's blood essence. This way, no one would pursue Chang'e's identity to avoid offending Nua. You can go back. After you and Zichen are married, you can come here with him to visit me. With that, Nua waved her hand and sent Chang'e back to the human ancestral temple. Along with her was a decree, a rainbow-colored crown, and a rainbow-colored feather robe. The decree was Nua's decree to confer Chang'e the title of Empress of the human race. The 7-colored crown and 7-colored feather robe were the wedding clothes that Nua had prepared for Chang'e. They were both middle-grade connate numinous treasures that could block Daluo Jinxian's attack. It had to be said that Nua had considered everything very thoroughly. She knew that with the foundation of the human race, it would be difficult to prepare a suitable wedding dress for Chang'e. She might as well prepare it all at once and save the human race the trouble. After all, 3 connate numinous treasures were nothing to her. Nua might not have the most connate numinous treasures in the primordial world, but she definitely did not lack connate numinous treasures. Because she had the cauldron of heaven and earth, she could directly refine any connate numinous treasure she needed. It was very convenient. The 7-colored crown and 7-colored feather robe fell and disappeared into Chang'e's glabella. The decree was laid flat on the altar and displayed in front of everyone. What was recorded on it was nothing more than Nua agreeing to make Chang'e the Empress. Her Majesty has agreed. She ordered us to prepare for the wedding. Dongyin took a step forward and saw the contents of the decree clearly. She could not help but be overjoyed and said to everyone. After that, everyone paid their respects to Goddess Nua, and then they left to prepare for the wedding. During this process, no one told Feng Zichen, and no one cared about Feng Zichen's opinion. It was because Nua had said that she would personally talk to Feng Zichen about this matter. This made the human race elders heave a sigh of relief. Although they had acted unusually tough in the human emperor's palace and forced Feng Zichen to bow his head, if Feng Zichen was determined to disagree, they could do nothing. Back then, Feng Zichen had agreed because he had predicted that they would not be able to find a suitable candidate, but he had missed the human race. The human race elders could not find a suitable candidate, but could the human race not find one? A moment of carelessness had caused a lot of trouble for himself. What's going on? Why am I suddenly feeling uneasy? It seems that something big is about to happen to me. Just as the human race elders were preparing for his wedding with Chang'e, Feng Zichen, the protagonist, finally sensed that something was wrong and woke up from his cultivation. Damn it, why can't I divine it? Realizing that something was wrong, Feng Zichen naturally used the deduction technique to search for the source of the matter. However, whether it was the connate 8 trigrams passed down by Fuxi, the Tao deduction technique passed down by the Grand Pure One, or the heavenly cycle dipper that he had comprehended from Zhouxing, he did not find any clues. This is the work of a powerful being, concealing the mysteries of heaven. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen figured out the reason. The deduction techniques that he had learned were all top-notch in the primordial world. In theory, he could calculate everything in the primordial world. However, that was in the hands of the Creator, not him. Although these 3 techniques were good, they were ultimately someone else's and not his. He could not use them smoothly. Ordinary things could be deduced, but once he encountered someone with similar strength or a grand master of divination, the deduction method would not be very effective. The deduction method. I have to deduce a deduction method that belongs to me. Otherwise, I will inevitably fall into the trap of others without knowing. As his thoughts raced, Feng Zichen set a goal for himself. He would use the deduction method that he knew as the foundation and supplement his own foundation to create a deduction method that belonged to him. Those who learn from me will live, and those who follow me will die. If he kept cultivating other people's methods, he would never be able to surpass the creator of the method. Only by walking his own path could he be on par with his predecessors, or even surpass them. However, this matter was not urgent. What he had to do now was to figure out who was scheming against him. With a thought, Feng Zichen was about to summon Hongmeng Daozhong. Hongmeng was the beginning of everything. All the principles in this world were evolved from him. Even the secrets of the heavens were no exception. With the help of Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen's deduction method could be improved to the level that was second only to Fuxi and the others, reaching the realm of a grandmaster. In the primordial world, there were not many things that could hide from him. However, before he could make a move, a consciousness descended and invited him to go to outer space. Goddess Nuwa summoned me. With a jolt of his heart, Feng Zichen followed the consciousness and rushed out of the sky. Nuwa summoned him at this time. It must have something to do with the matter that made him absent-minded. Perhaps he could get the answer from her. With the saint's guidance and Feng Zichen's leg strength, in an instant, Feng Zichen crossed countless space-time and arrived at the beautiful palace of Goddess Nuwa. Speaking of which, this was the first time Feng Zichen had come to Jinxiu. If it were in the past, he would definitely look around at the scenery here. But now he had something on his mind, so he had no time to appreciate the beautiful scenery here. He walked directly to the palace of Goddess Nuwa. Zichen pays his respects to the Holy Mother. Walking into the main hall, Feng Zichen bowed to the beautiful woman in palace attire standing in the hall. Zichen, there's no need to be so polite. Get up quickly. Nuwa was very happy to see Feng Zichen. Over the years, Feng Zichen had greatly made her proud. This made her awe-inspiring in front of the other saints for a long time. I wonder why the Holy Mother has summoned Zichen here. Is there anything important? After chatting with Nuwa for a while, Feng Zichen asked about the purpose of this trip. I called you here because I have a good news to tell you. Nuwa smiled and said, "Good news." What's the good news that the Holy Mother is so moved? On the other side, Feng Zichin asked in surprise as soon as Nuwa finished speaking. If even Nuwa said it was a good news, it must be a great thing. "It's a marriage I've arranged for you." Seeing Feng Zichin's curiosity, Nuwa was very satisfied. She didn't keep him in suspense and said directly, "What marriage?" At this moment, Feng Zichin's expression was very interesting. He thought of many possibilities, but he didn't expect that Nuwa had called him to the palace of Goddess Nuwa for her marriage. Were forced marriages so powerful now? Couldn't he escape to the untainted land? Don't underestimate this marriage. This marriage should be born for humanity. It's not a trivial matter. It's a human marriage among the three marriages of heaven, earth, and man. If you succeed, you can get great merits and be protected by humanity. Seeing Feng Zichin's expression, Nuwa thought that he didn't know the pros and cons of it, so she explained to him. But when Feng Zichin heard the word human marriage, his expression became even more bitter. He had been hiding for so long, but in the end he couldn't hide. He had underestimated the elder of the human clan. He had really found a candidate and obtained the approval of Nuwa. Otherwise, Nuwa would have called him over. That's strange. In the untainted land, there were only a few goddesses who had the same status as him, and they would not give themselves to him. Where did the elder of the human clan find her? She wasn't a cabbage on the roadside that could be found easily. Could it be that he had missed something? However, Feng Zichin's doubts didn't last long. When Nuwa saw his expression, she knew what he was thinking. She didn't hide anything and directly told him about Chang'e's origin. That woman's name is Chang'e. She is the reincarnation of the ancient moon god Wangshu. Because she had a feud with Dijun, she was plotted against and fell into the mortal world. This matter couldn't be hidden. She had to explain it to Feng Zichin clearly. Otherwise, it would be a ticking time bomb that could explode at any time. Hearing this, the corner of Feng Zichin's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He didn't know what expression to make. Everything was clear. Why did he feel uneasy? So this was the root of it. Why couldn't he calculate it? It involved a saint, a celestial emperor, and several top-notch great divine abilities. If he could calculate it, that would be a miracle. However, he had really forgotten about Chang'e flying to the moon. He had been too busy recently, so much so that he had forgotten such a big matter. He really shouldn't have. With Wangshu's identity, she was more than enough to be his match. However, if he remembered correctly, Chang'e's destined person should be Hou-yi. How did it have anything to do with him? Moreover, the matter of Chang'e flying to the moon was not simple. If Hou-yi shooting down the sun was the fuse of the great Magi Demon War, then Chang'e flying to the moon was another cause of the great Magi Demon War. It was after this matter that the 11 ancestral wizards made up their minds to create the 13th ancestral wizard. The demon race also discovered the abnormality of the human race because of this matter. They didn't hesitate to offend Nuwa and slaughter the human race to forge the witch-killing sword. After Chang'e flying to the moon, the great calamity of the human race was really not far away. What a headache! At this time, even Feng Zichin couldn't help but have a headache. The matter of human marriage was already troublesome enough for him. With the addition of Wangshu, it was simply such a person. Empress, can I refuse? After a long silence, Feng Zichin asked tentatively, "What do you think?" Nuwa replied with a faint smile. Seeing this, Feng Zichin understood that Nuwa would most likely not agree to his refusal. However, he couldn't agree just like that. After all, he still had to try. "Empress, the matter of human marriage is too big. It involves the position of the human emperor. If I complete the human marriage, it's hard to guarantee that I won't be suspected by Dijun and cause a great disaster for the human race." Seeing that his objection was useless, Feng Zichin had to state the pros and cons of it, hoping to make Nuwa have scruples and change her previous decision. Unexpectedly, after hearing Feng Zichen's words, Nuwa shook her head disdainfully and said, "Scruples about you? That's because you overestimate the human race." Now the demon race and the Wu tribe are like fire and water. They have reached a situation where they will fight to the death at any time. Di Jun's attention is all on how to deal with the Wu tribe. Even if he sees you get married, he has no time to care about you. When he defeats the Wu tribe, he will be the real celestial emperor in the untainted land. Even sages like us will have to respect him. At that time, even if you really become the human emperor, you will have to submit to him. How will he scruples about you? If he is defeated by the Wu tribe, I'm afraid that he can't even protect himself. Then it doesn't matter whether he scruples about you or not. In this case, what are you afraid of? Nuwa's words were reasonable and made Feng Zichen speechless. However, Feng Zichen was not a person who would give up easily. He continued to talk about Wang Shu's identity. Wang Shu and Di Jun have a great feud. If I marry her, won't I offend Di Jun? Compared to the sages, Di Jun and Di Jiang were the people who should not be provoked in the untainted land. It was reasonable that Feng Zichen was so worried. However, he forgot that, as a wizard, he had long been on Di Jun's must-kill list. Sure enough, Nuwa could not help but shake her head and laugh when she heard this. At this time, Feng Zichen also reacted and realized that he was a little anxious. "Sai, do you really not want to marry Chang?" After a while, Nuwa said leisurely. Feng Zichen was silent. He had said so much, but they were all excuses. His main purpose was that he did not want to marry Chang. How could Nuwa not understand? However, Feng Zichen had to marry her. This was not only to help Fushi settle the karma, but also for Feng Zichen's future. "Do you know why I have to let you win, Chang'e?" Seeing that Feng Zichen was silent, Nuwa asked. "For the marriage?" Feng Zichen replied with some uncertainty. Since Nuwa had asked this question, it meant that there were still things that she did not know. "It's not that. You can hide it from others, but you can't hide it from me. Everyone thinks that you major in the Khanate Sword Dao. After all, the Sword Ancestor is famous for opening up the Sword Dao. If he did not cultivate the Sword Dao wholeheartedly, how could he have such great achievements? But I know that's not the case. You major in the Dao of Stars. It has always been. It has never changed." Feng Zichen's third biggest secret was revealed by Nuwa. However, she was not surprised at all. Obviously, she had already known about it. Nuwa knew that he cultivated the Tao of Stars. Feng Zichen had indeed known about it a long time ago, because Nuwa could be said to have watched him grow up. She had been paying attention to him since the beginning of his cultivation. He could hide the fact that he cultivated the Tao of Stars from others, even Di Jun and Tai, but he could not hide it from Nuwa. Chang'e, the Khanate saint born by the lunar star, is the natural ruler of the lunar star. She is not the person who is most compatible with you in this world, but also the person who can help you the most. At this point, Feng Zichen had already understood what Nuwa meant. No matter who wanted to take charge of Zhouxing, they could not do without the help of the lunar star. If he married Wang Shu, he could replace her after Di Jun. The lunar star was one of the 3 supreme stars in the untainted land. When its moonlight fell on the untainted land, it could open the wisdom of all things. The Khanate saint born by it could be the Empress of Heaven. The solar star was also one of the 3 supreme stars in the untainted land. Its light shone on the earth and brought vitality to all things. It could be said that its merit was boundless. The Khanate saint born by it had the destiny of celestial emperor. The Ziwei star was also one of the 3 supreme stars in the untainted land. It was transformed by Panga's ancestral aperture. It was the most noble star and could command Zhouxing. The Khanate saint born by it was of the same origin as the Way of Heaven. It naturally had the capital to rule the untainted land and could be the heavens and earth. It could be said that between the Ziwei star and the solar star, whoever got the support of the lunar star could ascend to the position of celestial emperor. And this was Niua's plan for Feng Zichen. If Dijun lost his position, with Wang Shu's help, he might be able to ascend to the sky in one step and sit on the limitless position of celestial emperor. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen's heart was full of gratitude. Niua could be said to be extremely good to him. No one could find any fault with her. But in the end, he would fail to live up to Niua's good intentions. If there was no Ao Shui, it would be fine to agree to this matter. He would not suffer any losses anyway. Unfortunately, he knew Ao Shui first and had deep feelings for her. As for Chang Yi, he had never even seen her, let alone know her. He could not abandon Ao Shui and marry Chang. Goddess, even so, I still can't agree. Chapter 446. Why? Niua was not angry. Instead, she asked in a low voice, For Feng Zichen, the benefits of this matter outweighed the disadvantages. It could be said that if he married Chang Yi, it would be equivalent to him fighting for countless years less. This was a benefit that countless gods and demons of the primordial world could not get. Niua really could not think of a reason for Feng Zichen to refuse. I have a very good relationship with the ancestral dragon's granddaughter, Ao Shui. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen said truthfully, he was someone who could not stay idle. How could he stay obediently in the human race for tens of thousands of years? During this period, he often appeared in the East Sea. A small amount of time he asked the ancestral dragon for guidance on cultivation. Most of the time, he accompanied Ao Shui to tour the mountains and rivers. Cultivation also required a combination of work and rest. During this period of time, the relationship between the two of them, who were already in love with each other, could be said to have rapidly warmed up. If Feng Zichen was not worried about the tribulation of slaughtering people, he would have already proposed marriage to the ancestral dragon. However, even so, Feng Zichen had made up his mind. After the matter of the human race was over and the Lich demon tribulation was over, he would confess his feelings to Ao Shui. This was because only then could he be ranked at the top of the primordial world. He could use the world as a chessboard and all living beings as chess pieces to play with the saints. He would not be as restrained as he was now, worrying about this and that. Many times he could not help himself. If the Lich demon tribulation did not end, his future would be difficult to determine. How could he promise others? When a man faced his lover, regardless of whether he could do it or not, he would want to give her the best of everything. However, plans could not keep up with changes. Before he could express his feelings to Ao Shui, Niua had already begun to force him to marry her. I was wondering what the reason was. So that's how it is. I didn't expect you to be a playboy. After knowing the reason for Feng Zichen's rejection, Niua could not help but feel that it was a little funny. She had thought that it was a big deal. After all this time, it was just a small matter. This is easy. Since you can't let go of Ao Shui, then marry her too. Niua smiled and said decisively, if it were someone else, he would definitely not say so, be it Ao Shui or Chang Yi. Their identities were extremely precious. Few people in the primordial world could compare to them. Being able to marry one of them was already a great blessing. He even dared to ask for 2 women to serve 1 man. That was simply delusional. But Feng Zichen was different. His identity enough for him to have all of this. Ever since Pangu created the universe, there weren't many innate saints born, but there were still quite a number of them. There were 6 sages, including the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. However, there was only one great Taoist priest, Feng Zichen, to be blessed by the 3 Daos of heaven, earth, and man at the same time. What a great fortune this was! Moreover, Feng Zichen had the bearing of a celestial emperor. He was the most promising existence to inherit the position of Celestial Emperor after Dijun. He was also the most suitable successor to the position of Celestial Emperor in the primordial world. With such a noble status, it wasn't impossible for him to marry a few more people, let alone two, as long as the other party agreed. If it were in the past, Wang Shu would definitely not agree to marry Feng Zichen, let alone with someone else. But she was Chang'e now, which made this matter possible. The only problem now was Ao Shui. He had to think of a way to make her agree to this matter. However, this was not a problem for Niwa. Other than being a saint, she was also the first matchmaker in the primordial world. The marriage between Dijun and Wang Shu was the matchmaker she had mentioned. The heavenly marriage was presided over by her. She had experience in this matter. Empress, this isn't appropriate. He thought that Niwa would break off the marriage between him and Chang'e after hearing this. But he didn't expect that not only did Niwa not break off the marriage, but she also let him marry her. This trick really made Feng Zichen a little confused. There's nothing inappropriate about it. You don't have to worry about this matter. Leave it to me. Waving her hand to make Feng Zichen shut up, Niwa glared at him and said, this! Suddenly thinking that Niwa still had the identity of a matchmaker, Feng Zichen could not help but shut his mouth resentfully. At this point, he had already understood that this matter was no longer something he could interfere in. He could only follow Niwa's words and leave this matter to him. However, Feng Zichen was not completely without ideas in his heart. According to his estimation, even if he married Chang'e, this marriage would not last long. Now, Chang'e's innate wisdom had not awakened, and the memories belonging to Wang Shu were still sealed. She was ignorant, so naturally they could arrange them. But as her cultivation realm increased, Chang'e would sooner or later become Wang Shu. At that time, it would be hard to say whether this matter was a favor or a grudge. But no matter what, this marriage would not be able to last. As a supreme expert of the ancient times, how could Wang Shu tolerate himself marrying someone else, let alone with another woman? Therefore, this marriage was destined not to last long. It was only temporary. Then, the operation of this was greater. A marriage that was destined to have no result. Why bother too much? It was fine to maintain it in name. Feng Zichen thought so. Men were so hypocritical. Unfortunately, one step back would lead to another. When it was time to get married, it might not be as he thought. Who could say for sure what would happen in the future? All right, you can go back. As for Ao Shui, I will talk to her personally. I will not let her be estranged from you. Thinking about how to communicate with Ao Shui, Niwa did not have time to pay attention to Feng Zichen. She pointed at the door and motioned for him to leave. Your Highness, can you lend me the cauldron of heaven and earth? Feng Zichen would definitely not be happy to leave just like that. It was not easy to come to Empress Wa's palace. How could he return empty-handed? Take it. As soon as she finished speaking, the cauldron of heaven and earth appeared from the void and fell into Feng Zichen's hand. Niwa was still very generous to Feng Zichen. Thank you, Your Highness. After putting away the cauldron of heaven and earth, Feng Zichen turned around and left. Sai, what's going on? After returning to the human emperor's palace and thinking about everything that had happened in Empress Wa's palace, Feng Zichen's heart was full of helplessness. He wanted to go to Donghai to explain to Ao Shui, but he did not know how to say it. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly and place all his hopes on Niwa. Empress Niwa had said that she would solve this matter. She should be confident. Sigh. After sighing again, Feng Zichen took out the cauldron of heaven and earth and planned to refine a few clan weapons for the human race. The great calamity of the human race was coming. He could not indulge in love. He should work hard to improve the strength of the human race. Previously, Feng Zichen had already refined 3 clan weapons for the human race. They were the Swearin Lantern, Yu Chao Hall, and Z. But that was not enough. Of course, the stronger the human race was, the better. With a flip of his hand, Feng Zichen took out the virtuous golden net and put it into the cauldron of heaven and earth. This was the first postnatal fishing net. It was originally used to catch fish. Because of the merit, it had the ability to catch all living beings. Back then, Ao Shui was caught by this net and could not escape. Now, Feng Zichen wanted to refine it into the destiny of the human race and use it to become a clan weapon to protect all living beings. Tie silk into a net and collect all living beings. If this weapon was completed, it would be called the inescapable net. Boom! The long river of destiny of the human race appeared and fell into the cauldron of heaven and earth, refining together with the virtuous golden net. At the same time, the world origin, chaos origin, and Hongmeng origin flew out from Feng Zichen's body and surged into the cauldron of heaven and earth, enhancing the power of the virtuous golden net. Feng Zichen was no longer the same as before. The chaos bead, the world tree, and Hongmeng Daozhong were the same. Its power had been greatly enhanced. The origin, which was not abundant before, was not in short supply now. Therefore, only then did Feng Zichen dare to continue refining the clan weapon. Swish, swish, swish. 100 years later, a large golden net flew out of the cauldron of heaven and earth and disappeared into the void. However, if Daluo Jingxian came here, he would be able to see that the entire human territory was covered by a large golden net that was densely covered in lightning. If anyone dared to attack the human territory, they would probably be smashed into pieces in an instant. This was called the inescapable net. Under the Daluo Jingxian, even if they did not die if they touched it, they would still lose a layer of skin. With this net, there was no need to worry about anyone causing trouble in the human territory. After the inescapable net was refined, Feng Zichen took out another clay jar. This was the first clay jar after birth. It was a superior grade, postnatal merit numinous treasure. There was a space inside that could store people and items. It could also refine the essence of all things. Compared to the inescapable net, Feng Zichen valued this treasure more. Putting aside the ability of the clay jar to store people and items for the time being, the ability to refine the essence of all things was enough to raise the strength of the human race to a higher level. The human race was born weak. If they wanted to be strong, they had to work hard to cultivate. At this time, the role of the clay jar was displayed. It could remove impurities and refine the essence of all things, thus laying the strongest foundation for the future generations of the human race. Just this point alone, it was unknown how many treasures it had surpassed. This treasure was a supreme treasure that assisted in cultivation. With a thought, the cauldron of heaven and earth emitted a bright light. The connate Taoist rhymes spread out, and the auspicious air rippled, turning the surroundings into a fairyland. The clay jar flew out of Feng Zichen's hand and fell into the cauldron of heaven and earth. Not long after, it was refined into a ball of liquid. After all, the clay jar was just a superior grade, postnatal merit numinous treasure, while the cauldron of heaven and earth was a connate supreme treasure. The difference in level was too great. Facing him, there was no resistance at all. The reason for refining the clay jar was that Feng Zichen felt that it was too ugly and wanted to refine it again. In the beginning, Feng Zichen planned to refine the clay jar into the shape of a pot. In this way, after the new clay jar was refined, it could be called the Demon Refining Pot. However, as soon as he thought of this name, Feng Zichen rejected it, not to mention that the real Demon Refining Pot was in the hands of Niwa. The demon race had not yet attacked the human race. If he named the human race's race weapon the Demon Refining Pot, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? Therefore, Feng Zichen gave it another name, the God Refining Pot. However, every time he thought of this name, he felt a chill run down his spine. Therefore, he suddenly realized something and gave up on this name. The current primordial world was said to be the world of the magi and demons, but it was actually the world of the connate god-fiends. What was he trying to do by using the name of God? Refinement. It would be strange if there were no problems. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought for a long time and decided to refine the clay jar into the shape of a cauldron to correspond to his supreme divine ability, the Great Tao Furnace. The Great Tao Furnace had all the abilities that the clay jar had. The Great Tao Furnace also had all the abilities that it did not have. In terms of essence, the clay jar was an artificial creation and had great wisdom. However, the Great Tao Furnace contained the true meaning of the Great Tao. It had a deep foundation and unlimited potential, far surpassing the clay jar. Therefore, it was most suitable to refine the clay jar into a Great Tao Furnace. The weak had to be close to the strong. This was the truth of the primordial world. Just like how a snake wanted to transform into a flood dragon wanted to transform into a true dragon. However, the clay jar was just an artificial object. Although it was extraordinary, it was still a distance away from the Great Tao Furnace that Feng Zichen had created by verifying the Great Tao. It was impossible to refine the Great Tao Furnace with just it. Therefore, Feng Zichen took out the Chaos Divine Stone. This was a material from the great chaos outside the realm. It was incomparably precious and formed from the stagnant chaos chi. It could be used to refine connate numinous treasures. Chaos was the mother of all things. With the Chaos Divine Stone, the ability of the cauldron of heaven and earth to go against the connate heavens and the merit he had accumulated over the years, Feng Zichen was confident that he could refine a superior grade connate merit numinous treasure. In order to refine the Great Tao Furnace, Feng Zichen could be said to have bled a lot. All kinds of precious materials were taken out from his hands, as if they were free. Only after thousands of years could he refine the Great Tao Furnace. Very good. Looking at the large cauldron in front of him, it was simple and ancient, filled with the aura of the Great Tao, and surrounded by the aura of chaos. It was no different from his own divine ability. Feng Zichen couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. This treasure was definitely stronger than his divine ability. However, this was not the most perfect form of the Great Tao Furnace. According to Feng Zichen's speculation, the most perfect form of the Great Tao Furnace should be a top-grade chaos numinous treasure, not a connate cardinal treasure. The ability it displayed now was not even 1,000th of its perfect form. With a thought, the Hongmeng Daozhong appeared behind Feng Zichen. On it, the imprints of the 3,000 demon gods were ready to move. This was the missing part of the Great Tao Furnace. To imprint the imprints of the 3,000 chaos demon gods on the Great Tao Furnace. Then the Great Tao Furnace would immediately be baptized by the Great Tao. Even if it couldn't become a chaos numinous treasure, it could still become a top-grade chaos numinous treasure. Unfortunately, Feng Zichen's comprehension of the Great Tao was really limited. It couldn't support him to imprint the imprints of the chaos demon gods on the Great Tao Furnace. Every time he imprinted the imprints of the chaos demon gods on the Great Tao Furnace, this divine ability would collapse because it couldn't withstand the pressure of the imprints of the chaos demon gods, causing it to be difficult for him to succeed. But today, it was completely different. He had refined the Great Tao Furnace into a connate numinous treasure. Its ability to withstand pressure had increased by countless times. With the hardness of a connate numinous treasure, it might be able to withstand the pressure of the imprints of the chaos demon gods. As soon as he thought of it, Feng Zichen raised the Hongmeng Daozhong and imprinted the imprints of the chaos demon gods on the Great Tao Furnace. Buzz! As expected, when the first imprint of the chaos demon gods was imprinted on the Great Tao Furnace, it trembled violently. It was as if an invisible giant was beating it violently with a hammer. Buzz! When the second imprint of the chaos demon gods was imprinted, the great Tao furnace suffered even greater pressure. It trembled even more violently, and its body became a little smaller. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the imprints of the chaos demon gods were imprinted on the great Tao furnace one after another, it also changed. Its body became smaller and smaller, and the chaotic aura around its body became thicker and thicker. Wisps of the true meaning of the great Tao flowed out from its body, making it more and more simple and profound. Finally, when the great Tao furnace turned from 10 feet to 1 foot in size, Feng Zichen stopped and no longer imprinted the imprints of the chaos demon gods. At this time, the great Tao furnace had already been imprinted with 100 imprints of the chaos demon gods. It had already reached its limit. If he continued to imprint, it would definitely be crushed into pieces by the true meaning of the great Tao carried by the imprints of the demon gods. This was an irreparable damage. Therefore, Feng Zichen didn't dare to continue. However, this was enough. It meant that Feng Zichen's deduction was completely feasible. In the future, as long as he continued to improve the power of the great Tao furnace, he could continue to imprint the imprints of the demon gods on it. And if he wanted to improve the level of the great Tao furnace, it wouldn't be so troublesome. It was already closely related to the luck of the human clan. As the luck of the human clan increased, its level would naturally increase. Feng Zichen didn't need to worry too much. However, it wasn't appropriate to call it the Great Tao Furnace now. It should be renamed the Human Tao Furnace. The human clan would eventually achieve unprecedented success. They would make all the races of the wilderness respect the human clan and redefine the human Tao. In the wilderness of the human Tao, a superior grade, connate merit numinous treasure contained a chaotic space. It could trace all things back to their origin and transform them into the purest source. That's right, after the clay jar became the human Tao furnace, its ability to refine the essence of all things also improved. It could directly refine all things into the most primitive source without leaving behind a trace of impurities. With this treasure, the human clan's descendants might find it difficult to cultivate to the connate God-fiend Tao. But as long as they were willing to work hard, it wouldn't be difficult to go against the connate Tao. This was the foundation of the human clan's strength. After refining the human Tao furnace, Feng Zichen didn't continue refining other clan artifacts. Instead, he summoned the Swearin Lantern, Yu Chao Hull, and Black Robe to refine these 3 treasures. The human clan's providence was limited. It couldn't support too many clan artifacts. 5 was the limit of the human clan's providence. Any more, and they wouldn't be able to unleash the power that the clan artifacts should have. 9 was the limit. According to Feng Zichen's calculations, even if the human clan's providence was at its peak, it could only refine 9 treasures of providence at most. This was the limit of heaven and earth. It couldn't be reversed by humans. The 3 treasures of the Swearin Lantern were treasures that Feng Zichen had refined in his early years. At that time, his cultivation was far less powerful than it was now. He also didn't have a connate cardinal treasure, like the cauldron of heaven and earth. The treasures he refined naturally couldn't fully unleash their potential. Therefore, Feng Zichen refined these 3 treasures again to increase their power so that they could better deal with the future calamity. Just as Feng Zichen was refining in seclusion, Nuwa, who hadn't appeared for many years, moved today. She walked out of the beautiful Nuwa Palace and rushed to the East Sea. Obviously, this was for the matter between Feng Zichen and Ao Shui. Of course, the first person Nuwa wanted to see was not Ao Shui, but the ancestral Greygon. Ao Shui was the ancestral Greygon's granddaughter. If he wanted to marry her, he had to get the ancestral Greygon's consent. Otherwise, even if Ao Shui agreed, this matter didn't count. Only by dealing with the ancestral Greygon could he go find Ao Shui. It's Ho-E? What is he doing here? On this day, Feng Zichen, who was in seclusion, suddenly felt that the inescapable net that enveloped the entire human clan seemed to have encountered a terrifying existence. It was trembling violently, and he couldn't help but wake up from his seclusion. He released his divine consciousness and saw that it was Hou-Yi. He couldn't help but feel a little surprised. What was he doing here in the human clan? But immediately, Feng Zichen thought of why Hou-Yi was here. Wasn't it for Chang? Other than Chang, what else in the human clan was worth him coming here personally? However, there was one thing that Feng Zichen was puzzled about. How did Hou-Yi and Chang-Yi know each other? Ever since he came to the primordial world, many things had changed. Not to mention anything else. Just Chang-Yi's fate had changed a long time ago. She wasn't just an ordinary human cultivator like the legend said. Instead, she was the queen of the human race who was nurtured by the elders of the human race. She grew up in the imperial court. Then, the question came, how did the two of them know each other? Curious, Feng Zichen secretly used the connate 8 trigrams and began to calculate silently. It wasn't difficult to deduce this matter. Soon, Feng Zichen learned the cause and effect, and his gaze became strange. It turned out that when Chang-Yi went to the EC, she happened to meet Hou-Yi, who had come to the EC to look for the ZG state. Perhaps it was because he sensed the power of the same attribute. When Hou-Yi touched Chang-Yi, the source of the moon in his body suddenly acted up and broke through the seal set by the ancestral Magus, freezing Hou-Yi on the spot. When the kind-hearted Chang-Yi saw this scene, she immediately wanted to help. Of course, although Chang-Yi was kind, she wasn't stupid. She didn't directly help Hou-Yi remove the ice seal. Instead, she suppressed the power of the source of the moon and didn't let it continue to cause damage to Hou-Yi. At the same time, she also secretly contacted the human King Yu clan, who was overseeing the 7 planets continent, and asked him to come and help. Chang-Yi couldn't recognize Hou-Yi, but the Yu clan was experienced and knowledgeable. How could they not recognize the top Grand Magus of the Magus race? Knowing the relationship between the human emperor and the Magus race, he let Chang-Yi do her best to save Hou-Yi. With Chang-Yi's current strength, of course, she couldn't get rid of the source of the moon in Hou-Yi's body. However, with the help of the Yu clan, she could calm the source of the moon and stop Hou-Yi's injuries from worsening. Not long after, with the help of the two of them, Hou-Yi suppressed the source of the moon again. It was also because of this that Hou-Yi saw the possibility of recovering from his injuries. Since Chang-Yi could calm the source of the moon, it shouldn't be difficult for her to get rid of the source of the moon. Therefore, Hou-Yi asked Chang-Yi to lend him a hand. Unfortunately, he was mercilessly rejected by Chang-Yi. She was the future empress of the human race. How could she be involved with a man from another race? In order to avoid suspicion, she couldn't agree. Chapter 447. However, it was not easy for Hou-Yi to see the possibility of recovery. How could he give up so easily? If not for Feng Zichen, he would have dared to forcefully abduct her. The witch tribe was not a benevolent tribe. On the contrary, they were very cruel. If not, how could they rule the primordial world? The demons occupied Zhouxing and intercepted the stellar power of the heavenly cycle, causing the living beings of the primordial world to be unable to cultivate with the stellar power of the heavenly cycle. They formed a huge karma with the living beings of the world, causing boundless negative karma. What about the Magi? They did not occupy the sacred mountain of the primordial world, nor did they destroy the primordial world. However, they could attract negative karma that was no less than that of the demons. It could be seen how cruel they were. This was all negative karma that they had killed. The Magi had dominated the primordial world for so many years. Countless living beings had died in their hands. One had to know that. The Magi were famous for their brutality in the primordial world. This was not made up by outsiders. They had killed themselves. As a giant of the Magi, Hou-Yi was obviously not to be trifled with. The negative karma on him was definitely shocking. if not for the fact that he had obtained great fame from shooting the sun. His previous reputation would definitely make people change their expressions. In the primordial world, the Magi were the law, the Tao, and the only truth. Those who did not agree with this either lived in seclusion or became food for the Magi. The tyranny of the Magi could be seen from this. A mere Chang, he actually dared to disobey his orders. This was unimaginable in the past. Unfortunately, Hou-yi could not do anything to Chang, although he did not know the identity of the woman in front of him. She clearly had a high status in the human race to be able to make the king of the human race personally accompany her. If he touched her, Feng Zichen would definitely find trouble with him. At that time, Chang-yi's identity had not been confirmed by Nuwa, so she naturally could not call herself the queen of the human race. Therefore, although her status was high, she could not tell outsiders her exact identity. It was normal for Hou-yi not to know her identity. However, the Magi and humans had been friends for many years, and there were even marriages between them. He could not refuse Hou-yi's request. She could only helplessly promise that when her cultivation level improved, she would remove the source of the moon for Hou-yi. Just like that, 10,000 years passed. And during these 10,000 years, Hou-yi had been influenced by the extreme red embroidered ball of the great Yin origins. It could be said that he had been thinking about Chang-yi day and night. Unknowingly, he had fallen into a love tribulation, and his feelings for her were deeply rooted. This was not a big deal, but Feng Zichen was going to get married. Naturally, he had to inform the shaman tribe. When Hou-yi got the news, his love tribulation exploded on the spot. His mind was blinded, and he rushed to the human clan angrily. He wanted to see Chang-yi. Unfortunately, Chang-yi's heart was completely tied to Feng Zichen, and she had long forgotten about Hou-yi, whom she had only met once. From the moment the human Tao intervened, Di Jun's perfect plan completely went awry. While Feng Zichen was deep in thought, Hou-yi had already arrived at the heart of the human race. He was about to force his way into the human Tao imperial court to find Chang-yi. Grand Shaman Hou-yi, what is the meaning of this? Outside the human Tao imperial court, the two human kings, Dating and Yoyu, who had already rushed back to the human clan, saw Hou-yi coming over aggressively. They came out together and blocked him. Hou-yi's name could be said to have resounded throughout the primordial world ever since he shot down the sun. The two of them knew that even if they joined forces, they would not be Hou-yi's match. Therefore, after the two of them came out, they did not attack Hou-yi directly. Instead, they greeted him politely. The strong preyed on the weak. This was a truth that had never changed since time immemorial. Hou-yi was stronger than them, and the shaman tribe was stronger than the human clan. In the primordial world, strength was reason. Those who did not understand this would turn into dust. The two human kings were able to live until now, so they naturally had a deep understanding of this point. Therefore, even if Hou-yi directly barged into the heart of the human clan, although they were furious, they still had to suppress their anger and bow to Hou-yi. Otherwise, if it were anyone else who dared to look down on the human clan like this, they would have long slapped them to death. I want to see Chang-yi. Hou-yi took a deep breath and said, the entanglement of love had already caused him to lose his wisdom of the past. Otherwise, as long as he was not stupid, he would know that these words should not have been said. What did you say? As soon as these words were said, the expressions of the Dating clan and the Yoyu clan changed drastically. Even the elders hiding in the imperial court had extremely ugly expressions when they heard this. Right before the human emperor's wedding, he wanted to see his fiancée. What was he trying to do? Did he really think that the human clan was made of mud? This was not the way to humiliate others. No matter how good his temper was, he could not stand this. If this matter were to spread, the human clan would really have no face to establish themselves in the primordial world. They might as well die. Without dignity, how could they cultivate the Tao? This joke is not funny. Looking at Hou-yi, the Yoyu clan forced a smile and said awkwardly, Until now, he still couldn't believe that those words had come from Hou Yi's mouth. Was he crazy? One had to know that. The human emperor Feng Zichen was a shaman. In the shaman tribe, he was second only to the 12 ancestral shamans. No matter how powerful Hou Yi was, he could not compare to him. If news of Hou Yi humiliating Feng Zichen spread back to the shaman tribe, the ancestral shamans would be the first to not let him off. Offending one's superiors was a huge taboo. I'm not joking. I don't want to make things difficult for the human clan. Hand over Chang Yi, and I'll leave. The more hatred Di Jun had in his heart, the greater Hou Yi's tribulation. From this, it could be seen how deep Hou Yi's tribulation was. He had already sunk into it and only had Chang Yi in his heart. He could not care too much. It seems that Grand Shaman Hou Yi is determined to go against the human clan today. At this point, there was no need to say anything else. They could only fight. Either they used Hou Yi's blood to wash away the humiliation the human clan received, or they used their own blood to defend the dignity of the human clan. Buzz! A crimson halberd appeared in the dating clan's hand. It was surrounded by a bloody light and released a shocking murderous aura. The Crimson Blood Halberd. The halberd was called the Crimson Blood Halberd. It was a middle-grade, connate spiritual treasure made of connate divine iron and the blood of the Chaos Fiend God. It had shocking destructive power and could destroy one's body and primordial spirit. It was a top murderous weapon in the Eldritch world. The bloody light that surrounded it was formed by the blood of the Chaos Fiend God. The dating clan was also a person with amazing luck. He obtained the Crimson Blood halberd by chance. He relied on the halberd to make a name for himself in the east of the Eldritch world. Whoosh! The sound of a long sword being unsheathed was heard. A long sword appeared in the Yoyu clan's hand. It was the Seven Luminaries' sword. It was also a middle-grade connate spiritual treasure. The Yoyu clan had been in charge of the Seven Luminaries state for many years and had a connection with the Seven Luminaries. One day, a divine sword fell from the sky in front of him. It was the Seven Luminaries' sword. When the sword was swung, it could mobilize the power of the Seven Luminaries and the 5 elements. It was very powerful. Without saying a word, the two of them immediately used their strongest divine powers and attacked Hou Yi, facing an expert like Hou Yi who shocked the Eldritch world. If they did not attack first, they would not have the chance to attack. Sigh. Why bother? Seeing the two of them attacking, even Hou Yi could not help but be cautious. Things were different now. If he was in peak condition, it would be easy to deal with the two of them. But now he was suffering from a chronic illness and could not use even a fraction of his strength. It would not be so easy to win. Boom! 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 Daluo Jinxian's battle was naturally extraordinary. The surrounding void instantly shattered, and the laws of heaven and earth appeared one after another, releasing a destructive aura. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. Fortunately, this place was close to the human Tao Imperial Court. With this supreme treasure, although the 3 of them caused a big commotion, it did not affect the surrounding clansmen. This Hou Yi is really presumptuous. Feng Zichen, who came back to his senses, saw this scene and was furious. If Chang Yi did not agree to marry him, Hou Yi could see her however he wanted. He could even let the 2 of them be together. It was just a strange woman. If the 2 of them were in love, so what if he let them be together? It might even become a good story. However, Hou Yi knew that Chang Yi was his fiancée, yet he still dared to barge into the human race so arrogantly. He was simply looking down on him and the human race. If he was not taught a lesson this time, he would lose face as Feng Zichen, the dignity of the human race, and the dignity of the primordial world. This matter could not be settled peacefully. Human Tao Imperial Court suppress. With a thought, Feng Zichen directly activated the supreme treasure, the Human Tao Imperial Court. Rumble. Thousands of beasts galloped, and thousands of rays of light shone. Billions of connate Tao patterns hung down like a river flowing backward, sweeping toward Ho-E. No, Ho-E, who was fighting with the Yoyu and dating clansmen, suddenly felt a huge pressure. He only had time to scream before he was suppressed by the human Tao Imperial Court. This was the first time the connate supreme treasure, the human Tao Imperial Court, showed its power to the world. As soon as it was born, it suppressed Ho-E, who was known as the strongest among Daluo Jinxian. Roar! Open for me. Under the human Tao Imperial Court, Ho-E was unwilling to be suppressed like this. Ignoring his injuries, he forcefully revealed his true form of a grand shaman and waved his arms, wanting to overturn the human Tao Imperial Court. However, the human Tao Imperial Court shook slightly and all time and space froze. Ho-E was fixed there on the spot, unable to move at all. With the chaos bead as its core and the power of faith as its form, the human Tao Imperial Court was a true supreme treasure of the human race with boundless power. Not to mention that Ho-E was injured. Even if he was at his peak, he could easily suppress him. This was the terrifying thing about connate supreme treasures. They were comparable to saints. Guards, bring my message to the Dejiang tribe and ask for an audience with the Dejiang ancestral shaman. Ask him to give me an explanation. In the human emperor palace, Feng Zichen said coldly, Ho-E was the strongest grand shaman of the Dejiang tribe. His arrows could ignore space and hit anywhere he wanted. It was an amazing use of the Tao of space. Even the current Feng Zichen could not compare with him in terms of comprehension of the space Tao. This was the talent of the Dejiang tribe. Outsiders could not be envious. Teacher, don't be angry. I'll invite the ancestral shaman over right away. As soon as Feng Zichen finished speaking, a sorcerer from the sorcerer tribe, who was traveling among the human tribe, shouted loudly before the human tribe could reply. As the shaman shouted, he rushed into the void without looking back. He was afraid that if he was a step late, Ho-E would be killed by the humans. In recent years, the relationship between the humans and shamans had become closer. Many shamans would come to the human race to travel and see the new creation. Therefore, it was not strange that there were shamans in the human race. There were even some shaman tribes near the human race. Of course, there were also many humans who learned from the shaman tribe. Although the Tao of God Fiends originated from the human race, it was more suitable for the shaman tribe. This Tao had flourished in their hands. Their powerful talent allowed them to create all kinds of incredible techniques and abilities. Naturally, they attracted many humans to learn from them. When the shaman saw Ho-E come to the human race aggressively, he knew that things were bad. When he heard Ho-E speak, his face changed greatly. He wished he could immediately go forward and seal his mouth. Unfortunately, his cultivation was only half a step away from Daluo Jinxian. He could not intervene in the conversation between the three. What happened after that, he could not change anything. He could only watch as Ho-E was suppressed. Now, Feng Zichen wanted Dejiang to give him an explanation. The shaman was afraid of wasting time, so he took the initiative to accept the task and hurried to invite the ancestral shaman of Dejiang. Compared to the human race, it was easier for the shaman tribe to ask for the ancestral shaman. Humph! The shaman left directly. Feng Zichen did not say anything. He snorted and asked the people below to comfort the people. Then he left. You are Chang'e. In the side hall, Feng Zichen finally saw the legendary woman, Chang'e. Beautiful. As the legend said, she was really beautiful. In the untainted land, there were no more than 10 people who could compare with her in terms of beauty since ancient times. Even Feng Zichen, who was used to seeing the world, could not help but be stunned for a moment when he saw her for the first time. He did not react until the other party replied. Chang'e greets your majesty. Chang'e replied shyly at first. Then, as if she remembered something, she explained to Feng Zichen in a panic, I only met Ho-E once. I've only met Ho-E once. I don't know why he's looking for me. Today's matter was caused by her. If Feng Zichen misunderstood her relationship with Ho-I, it would be troublesome. I already know the reason for this matter. It really has nothing to do with you. This is because Ho-I was schemed against, causing his true spirit to be ignorant and fall into the love tribulation. You were just implicated. Even if you were not involved, there would be someone else. Waving his hand, Feng Zichen briefly explained the matter to Chang. Niwa had set her eyes on Chang as long as she was still a human. This marriage could not be cancelled. Then there was no need to create estrangement because of a small matter. Then why did your majesty? Hearing this, Chang-I asked hesitantly. Although she did not say it out loud, Feng Zichen understood what she wanted to ask. It was nothing more than knowing that there was a problem with Ho-I. Why did he still make things difficult for the witch tribe? Haha. I don't care why he is so presumptuous today. If I don't teach him a lesson, he won't be able to raise his head in the untainted land in the future. With a smile, Feng Zichen said. Face was still very important in the untainted land. All right, it's time for me to leave. After chatting with Chang-I for a while, Feng Zichen got up and left. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the day of Feng Zichen's wedding. On this day, Ao Shui came. Compared to before, she was much more haggard. The two of them met again and were speechless. Shui, are you here? After a long time, Feng Zichen broke the silence. Yes, I heard that you're getting married, so I came over to take a look. Nodding, Ao Shui said expressionlessly. Hearing this, Feng Zichen's heart ached. He opened his mouth and wanted to explain, but he didn't know how to say it. You don't have to explain. Master has already told me the reason for this matter. After a moment, Ao Shui said, Master? Feng Zichen was a little puzzled. When did Ao Shui have a master? But immediately he understood that this master was probably referring to Niwa. He didn't know how Niwa talked to the ancestral dragon, but Ao Shui became his disciple, his only disciple. This is... Feng Zichen was about to say something when he suddenly saw a strange red light flash across Ao Shui's body. Then his limbs became weak and he couldn't move. You're mine. Ao Shui walked to Feng Zichen's side, took off his clothes, and rolled onto the bed with him. Pure ignorance. After that, Ao Shui put on her clothes and said to Feng Zichen, who was still weak, I'll wait for you at the palace of Empress Hua. I'll wait for you to fulfill your previous promise. After saying that, Ao Shui turned around and left. Promise? After being stunned for a moment, Feng Zichen understood. Previously, he had promised Ao Shui that after the Lich and Demon calamity, he would officially propose marriage to the ancestral dragon and marry Ao Shui. Ao Shui had always remembered this matter in her heart. Chapter 448. Fellow Taoist, I'm really sorry. It's my fault for not disciplining him well. As a result, Ho-I broke the rules and offended you. I hope you can forgive him. Not long after Ao Shui left, Dijiang, who had not appeared for a long time, finally came. As soon as he appeared, he did not give Feng Zichen a chance to blame him and directly apologized. It could be said that he had given Feng Zichen enough face. This attitude made it difficult for Feng Zichen to blame him. He could only keep the words that he had prepared in advance to blame him in his heart. Dijiang was also smart. He knew that Ho-I would definitely deeply anger him if he came to snatch Feng Zichen's fiancée. Then, even if he went, Feng Zichen, who was in a towering rage, would probably not give him face and release Ho-I. Since that was the case, he might as well not go. It would not be too late to go after Feng Zichen's anger subsided. Anyway, he would not kill Ho-I. It was only right to let Ho-I suffer a little and let Feng Zichen vent his anger. To be honest, when what Ho-I had done was spread back to the wizard tribe, Dijiang's face turned green with anger. He could not figure out how Ho-E would dare to go to the human race to snatch a marriage and Feng Zichen's marriage. Did he really not take Feng Zichen seriously? He was a wizard, a teacher that Pangu had personally conferred and recognized by the wizard tribe. If Ho-E was not a Khanate wizard with a noble status, second only to the ancestral wizard, Dijiang would really want to slap him to death. Fellow Taoist, where is Ho-E now? He dares to offend you like this. I will definitely punish him severely. After exchanging pleasantries with Feng Zichen for a while, Dijiang finally told him the purpose of his visit. He wanted to take Ho-E away. What he meant was, fellow Taoist, it's been so long. You've punished him and your anger should have subsided. Shouldn't you let him go? Even if your anger hasn't subsided, I'll take him back and punish him well. It'll be considered as appeasing you. It was not appropriate to keep suppressing the human race. Dao brother, you're exaggerating. I already know the reason this time. Ho-E was also schemed against by others. He really can't be blamed. Feng Zichen did not want to ruin his relationship with the witch tribe over such a small matter. Since Dijiang gave him face, he took the opportunity to cover up this matter. However, the matter of Ho-E being schemed against by Dijun still had to be told to him. A scheme? What's going on? Hearing this, Dijiang could no longer sit still. He had long felt that there was something wrong with the matter caused by Ho-E. Ho-E was not a fool. How could he do such a brainless thing? There was clearly a problem. Taoist brother, please take a look. Feng Zichen smiled and didn't say anything. He projected Ho-Ye's current situation in front of Dijiang for him to see. At this moment, Ho-E was exactly the same as when he was first suppressed. There was no change at all. His eyes were scarlet and his face was filled with madness. He wanted to devour someone. The time and space that belonged to him had been completely suppressed by the human Tao imperial court. As long as Feng Zichen did not remove the seal, Ho-E would remain in his current state until the immeasurable calamity arrived. However, Dijiang's attention was clearly not on the power of the human Tao imperial court. Instead, it was focused on Ho-Ye's scarlet eyes. That red was abnormally bright. The aura of lust inside circulated endlessly, evolving into all kinds of scenes of love between a man and a woman. It was so mesmerizing that one could not extricate themselves from it and completely sink into it. Love tribulation. Dijiang's pupils constricted as he cried out involuntarily. Ho-Ye's current state was clearly that of someone who had fallen deeply into the love tribulation and could not extricate himself. The word love was the most hurtful. Primordial chaos was unharmed, but love hurt oneself. This was the injury that he had caused to himself. It was a wound on the great Tao, a wound on his Tao heart. It was the most serious and difficult to heal. The demons are really good. In a flash, Dijiang figured out the cause and effect. This was definitely done by the demons. This was because in the current world, only Nuwa and the demons who controlled Joshing could lure Daluo Jinxian into the love tribulation. Feng Zichen was Nuwa's face outside. Nuwa would definitely not scheme against him like this. The mastermind behind this matter was obvious. It was the demons. They had enough motives. Fellow Taoist, can Hui be saved? After a moment, Dijiang asked Feng Zichen in a deep voice. He was deeply immersed in the love tribulation, and his Tao heart had sunk. He really could not think of a way to save Ho-E. He could only place his hopes on Feng Zichen. After all, Feng Zichen's wisdom was obvious to all. This Feng Zichen pondered for a moment and said, "If it's just the origin of the moon, after a period of time, my understanding of the path of innate yin and yang will improve. I will be able to remove the origin of the moon in Ho-Ye's body and treat his injuries. However, the love tribulation on his body is more difficult to deal with. If it's an ordinary love tribulation, I might be able to sever his relationship by using the method of entering the Tao in dreams. However, Dijun had calculated everything and did not give outsiders a chance to help Ho-E. I can't do it. Shaking his head, Feng Zichen sighed. Hou-yi was crippled. With Di-jun's strength, even if the Magi used all their strength, they would not be able to protect Hou-yi. It would be easy to kill him. However, Di-jun did not want to. He wanted to torture Hou-yi and make him suffer a fate worse than death to vent the hatred in his heart. However, this also meant that the Battle of the Magi was not far away. It was easy for Di-jun to deal with Hou-yi, and it was also easy for Di-jiang to deal with the demon god. In the past, both sides had their own scruples or because of their identities, so they would not attack the Daluo Jinxian of the two clans. But now, Di-jun was the first to break the rules. He secretly attacked Hou-yi, a Khanate magus who had a chance of becoming a quasi-saint, and crippled him. Then Di-jiang would not be polite. He would definitely attack the demon god who had a chance of becoming a quasi-saint. In the future, the Daluo Jinxian of the two clans would be in danger. At this time, both sides were already unscrupulous. It was just a matter of who could not help but launch the final battle. Is there really no other way? Di-jiang was a little confused, as if he could not accept this result. Hou-yi was the top combat strength of the Magi. He alone could fight several figures at the level of the 10 great demon gods. Losing him would be a huge loss to the Magi. It's not that there's no other way. Why don't we put Hou-yi's true spirit into the reincarnation cycle and let him experience 100 reincarnations? Maybe one of them can break through the love trial and return. After pondering for a moment, Feng Zichen suggested a solution that was not really a solution. This solution could be said to be half good and half bad. After 100 reincarnations, if Hou-yi could break through the love trial, not only would he recover from his injuries, but he would also be one step closer to becoming a quasi-saint. But if he could not break through, then it would be troublesome. He would probably sink forever until he was worn down by the reincarnation cycle. Golden immortals were immortal and indestructible, but the 6 Paths of Reincarnation disc was a chaos supreme treasure after all. Its might was immeasurable, and its profundity was beyond imagination. Perhaps it could really wear down a golden immortal. After all, the essence of the chaos treasure had far surpassed that of a saint. No one knew what it would be like when it was fully unleashed. Let's do as you said and put Hou-yi's true spirit into the reincarnation cycle. After thinking, Di-jiang made up his mind. Hou-yi's appearance would be like sending himself to death if he participated in the battle between the Magi and the demons. It would be better to send him into the reincarnation cycle. No matter how bad it was, it couldn't be that bad. There's no time to lose. I'll bring Hou-yi to Huta now. Di-jiang was also impatient. As soon as he made up his mind, he was about to take action. He reached out his hand and grabbed Hou-yi of the Human Dao Imperial Court. Rumble. The space-time sealed by the Human Dao Imperial Court shattered under Di-jiang's huge hand. Hou-yi was caught in his hand just like that. Seeing this scene, Feng Zichen's pupils couldn't help but shrink. He was even more shocked by Di-jiang's strength. Even if the Human Dao Imperial Court had not fully recovered, it was still a Khanate treasure. Under its suppression, even a quasi-saint would not be able to escape easily. But Di-jiang had rescued Hou-yi with just a slight shake, which was enough to show its strength. A casual attack could severely injure a quasi-saint. Half-origin, a proper half-step primordial chaos expert. Di-jiang's current strength was definitely not inferior to Di-jun's. It was the legendary half-origin realm and was not far from achieving the Tao. And all of this, it was all brought about by the Tao of gods and demons. According to the normal course of history, although Di-jiang was strong, he was only at the peak of the quasi-saint realm. He was far from being as strong as he was now. This made Feng Zichen very excited. The more he changed, the more changes there would be in the future of the primitive world. Anyone could seize the opportunity to transcend and not be manipulated by the heavenly Tao. Fellow Taoist, I can't attend your wedding. This is a congratulatory gift from the 12 ancestral shamans. I'll give it to you in advance. After rescuing Ho-E, Dijiang took out a jade box and handed it to Feng Zichen. Then he left. Ho-E. Whether this is a calamity or a fortuitous opportunity, it all depends on your own fortune. Looking in the direction Dijiang left, Feng Zichen was a little silent. With Dijiang gone, there would be no Wu Gang in the future. He didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse for Ho-E. The wizard tribe has dominated the primitive world for many years. It can be said that they are very rich. The gift they sent must be extraordinary. At this time, Feng Zichen had time to look at the gift from the 12 ancestral shamans. In terms of wealth, Ancestor Hong Jun deserved to be the first in the primitive world. The second was between the wizard tribe and the demon tribe. In the primitive world, there were endless fortunes and countless natural treasures. No one would believe that the wizard tribe was poor. Hey, it's the natural Taoist jade. The wizard tribe is really rich. It's just a gift box, but it's made with a whole piece of natural Taoist jade. How extravagant! The natural Taoist jade was a special jade formed by the natural Taoist connotation. It contained the mystery of the great way of heaven and earth. It could help people understand the heaven and earth. It could also be branded with the Taoist connotation of the heaven and earth. It could even be refined into an acquired supreme treasure. The value of this item was no less than a congenital magic treasure. It could even be said that it was no less than an ordinary congenital spirit treasure. Its preciousness could be imagined. The jade box in Feng Zichen's hand was made with a large piece of natural Taoist jade. It could be refined into a good acquired supreme treasure. If it was stored in the chaos bead for a few hours, it might become a congenital spirit treasure. However, it was precisely this sort of treasure that was used as a storage container. Thus, the treasures inside must be even more precious. Chapter 449. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen could not wait to open the jade box. As this item was personally handed to Feng Zichen by Dijiang, there were no restrictions on the jade box. Feng Zichen opened the jade box easily. There was no shocking phenomenon, nor was there any abnormal fluctuation. There were 12 pearls lying quietly in the jade box, blooming slightly. Connate pearls. These 12 pearls were the Connate pearls. They were born with the Connate Tao, and their bodies were surrounded by Connate Tao. They were extraordinary. Their attributes were different. There were metal, wood, water, fire, earth, time, space, wind, rain, lightning, and poison. They corresponded to the attributes of the 12 ancestral witches. Each of them was a middle-grade Connate spiritual treasure. These were the Connate spiritual treasures of the 12 ancestral witches. The Connate spiritual pearls. The 12 ancestral witches were born holy and could be called the sons of Pangu. When they were born, they naturally had Connate spiritual treasures. This was a necessary benefit for Connate godfiends. They had at least one Connate spiritual treasure. Even if they were born without primordial spirits and could not use Connate spiritual treasures, they were no exception. The Connate spiritual pearls were the Connate spiritual treasures formed when the 12 ancestral witches were born. The fragments of the chaos bead entangled with the origins of the 12 ancestral witches. It was the manifestation of their origins. Although its level was not high, it could help people comprehend the Tao and the Tao of the 12 ancestral witches. Good treasure! What a good treasure! Taking out the Connate spiritual pearls, Feng Zichen's expression was slightly excited. Such a treasure was exactly what he lacked. Comprehending the Tao of the 12 ancestral witches was just a trivial matter to him. The fragments of the 12 chaos beads contained in it were the treasure that really moved him. When the Connate spiritual pearls were combined, it would be a supreme grade Connate spiritual treasure, and swallowing a supreme grade Connate spiritual treasure, Even if it was the chaos bead that had been promoted to a connate cardinal treasure, he would still gain a lot of benefits. Perhaps an connate divine restriction would be born because of this. Come. Without hesitation, Feng Zichen directly took out the chaos bead and swallowed the connate spiritual pearls. Although supreme-grade connate spiritual treasures were precious, they were nothing compared to connate cardinal treasures. Losing a supreme-grade connate spiritual treasure would allow the might of the connate cardinal treasure to improve further. No matter how one looked at it, it would not be a loss. Feng Zichen naturally knew what to do. One had to know that while connate spirit treasures had 9 innate divine seals, each innate divine seal was a grade. Connate treasures with 46 innate divine seals were known as inferior grade connate cardinal treasures. A connate treasure with 47 innate divine seals was known as a mid-grade connate cardinal treasure. By analogy, a connate dharma treasure with 49 connate divine seals was the strongest dharma treasure that could be nurtured in the prehistoric era. A supreme-grade connate cardinal treasure. Anything that surpassed this limit would be the most powerful magic treasure known to man, the chaos treasure. That was a treasure that could only be nurtured by the great Tao and the chaos outside the realm. The primordial world was far from being able to do that. The primal chaos bead was a connate cardinal treasure with 46 connate divine seals. It was classified as a lesser connate cardinal treasure. There was a huge gap between it and the 3 legendary connate cardinal treasures. Just like the Saint and Hongjun, they seemed to be in the same realm, but the gap between them was huge. They were far from comparable. But now, after devouring the 12 connate spiritual pearls, the primal chaos bead had been further repaired. It had developed another connate divine seal and become a mid-grade connate cardinal treasure. Although it was still incomparable to the 3 great connate cardinal treasures, its power had been greatly increased. In the future, when Feng Zichen found more fragments of the primal chaos bead for it to devour, it would definitely be able to compete with it. As a chaos treasure, the primal chaos bead might not be inferior to Penga's axe. Indeed, the primal chaos bead was shattered by Penga's axe, but that did not mean that the primal chaos bead was inferior to Penga's axe. That was because Penga's axe was in Penga's hands. It had almost invincible strength. With just one strike, it had shattered the primal chaos bead. But if Penga's axe was not in Penga's hands, would he still be able to shatter the primal chaos bead? It was Pengu who had made Penga's axe famous, not Penga's axe Pengu. Without Penga's axe, Pengu was still Pengu, invincible under the great Tao, the number 1 chaos fiend god. However, Penga's axe was one of the 3 chaos treasures. It might not be stronger than the other 2 chaos treasures. Therefore, Feng Zichen firmly believed that as long as he could upgrade the primal chaos bead to the level of a supreme-grade connate numinous treasure, the 3 chaos bead would become the most powerful connate numinous treasure. It would become the second most powerful numinous treasure in the primordial world, second only to the 6 paths of reincarnation disc. After all, the primal chaos bead was formed from the essence of the chaos bead. It was its foundation and had inherited all its abilities. As for the 3 chaos treasures, they were connate cardinal treasures formed from the chaos treasure Penga's axe's essence after it shattered. They each inherited a portion of its power, but they were far from being comparable to the real Penga's axe. In that case, the 3 chaos treasures were inferior to the primal chaos bead and the chaos green lotus of the same grade. It could be seen from their names. Penga's banner, Taiji diagram, and primal chaos bead were no longer known as Penga's axe. As for the other 2 chaos treasures, although they were more thoroughly shattered, their names were still preserved. This meant that they had the possibility of reappearing, but Penga's axe did not. Boom! 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 After devouring the 12 connate pearls, the primal chaos bead underwent a shocking change. Countless mysterious runes were born from the void, densely packed and endless. They interweaved inside the primal chaos bead, forming a new connate divine restriction. At this moment, the primal chaos bead was upgraded from an inferior grade connate cardinal treasure to a middle grade connate cardinal treasure. The Tao light on its body became deeper and darker, like a black hole that devoured all the light around it. It made one feel as if they would sink into it and be swallowed by the endless primal chaos, see with just a glance. And this was only the external change. Inside the primal chaos bead, an even more intense change was happening. In the center of the primal chaos, the ancient door, the space-time door, became larger and clearer. It exuded an ancient aura, even more ancient than heaven and earth, as if it existed with the primal chaos. Wisps of purplish-black airflow surged out of the ancient door and wandered around the primal chaos space. Wherever it passed, the surrounding primal chaos chi seemed to have met a king and retreated, expressing their submission. Domineering, incomparably domineering, even more domineering than the primal chaos chi. This was a power that was higher than the primal chaos chi. It was the product of the combination of the power of the great Tao and the primal chaos chi. It had a power that was closer to the Tao. Such power was born in the depths of the primal chaos, the place where the great Tao lived in seclusion. That was the most sacred place in the world. The power of the great Tao was so majestic, unimaginable, and unsurpassable. It was truly omnipotent. Where the great Tao was, the primal chaos chi bathed in its power all year round. Of course, it would undergo a shocking change and become the power that was closest to the Tao. After the primal chaos bead was upgraded, the ancient door of primal chaos also rose in power. Its power was greatly increased, and it actually opened a passage that led to the depths of the primal chaos bead, stealing the power of the great Tao from there. Although it was only a trace, and it was not the purest power of the great Tao, it was still an extremely incredible thing. That was the power of the great Tao. Even if it was only a trace, it could still bring great benefits to people. Moreover, the power of the great Tao stolen by the door of primal chaos was more than a trace. It could only steal a trace at a time, but it was stealing this power all the time. In the long run, it would definitely be able to steal a lot of power of the great Tao for Fengzichen, regardless of whether it was used for cultivation or refining treasures. This energy was extremely valuable. In fact, if there was enough of this power, it might even be able to refine the Hongmeng purple gas or the origin of the great Tao. Of course, this required a lot of power. With the current speed of the door of primal chaos, it would not be enough even if it accumulated for hundreds of millions of years. However, the speed of the door of primal chaos stealing this power naturally would not remain unchanged. With the upgrade of the primal chaos bead, its power would definitely increase further. At that time, it would steal even more power of the great Tao. Perhaps the power of the great Tao that it stole would be even purer and more advanced. It would not be like now, where other than a small part of the power of the great Tao, there was also a large amount of primal chaos chi mixed in. Good. With this power, my foundation will definitely be greatly improved. After putting away the primal chaos bead, Fengzichen still could not hide the excitement in his heart. Such an unforeseen event was something that he had not expected. His original intention was only to increase the power of the primal chaos bead so that he could better deal with the great calamity that would soon come. However, the outcome brought him a huge surprise. Fengzichen did not need this item to increase his power. He was the great Taoist priest. As long as he cultivated step by step, he would be able to advance to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian at the fastest speed. However, he could use this power to refine treasures and innate spirit treasures. The great Tao was omnipotent, so his power was naturally omnipotent. This power was higher than the primal chaos chi and contained the mighty power of the great Tao. It had an incredible ability. If there were enough of it, it could even create things out of thin air and directly evolve into innate spirit treasures. Even if there were not enough of it, it could be supplemented by innate divine materials to refine innate spirit treasures. Innate divine materials were of the same origin as innate spirit treasures. Logically speaking, they should be able to refine innate spirit treasures. However, innate spirit treasures that were refined after birth had an additional trace of craftsmanship. It was far from being as natural as those that were born from the creation of heaven and earth. Just this trace of craftsmanship could distinguish between innate and innate spirit treasures. However, the mighty power of the great Tao could eliminate this trace of craftsmanship, making the Dharma treasures refined by humans no different from the Dharma treasures that were born from the creation of heaven and earth. With this, one could refine innate spirit treasures. Go. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen threw the jade box made of innate Tao jade into the chaos bead, allowing it to absorb the mighty power of the great Tao to its heart's content. Although the mighty power of the great Tao was powerful, the mighty power of the great Tao that he obtained was obviously not pure. It still had some ability, so he had to test it out personally. He threw the jade box in because he wanted to see what stage the mighty power of the great Tao in the chaos bead could raise it to. If it was an innate spirit treasure, this power was worth paying attention to. If it was only an innate spirit treasure, then this power would be of little use. It was better to save it up. When there were more of it, he would calculate it. After doing all this, Feng Zichen put on the wedding robe that Niuhua had carefully prepared for him and strode out. After delaying for so long, the day of the wedding was right in front of him. It was time for him to go out and meet the guests. The auspicious time has arrived. Bow. In the ancestral temple of the human race, the ritual officer calculated the time and shouted loudly. Then Feng Zichen and Chang Yi bowed according to the instructions. First, they bowed respectfully to the heavens and earth to show the kindness of the heavens and earth. Then they bowed to Niuhua to thank Niuhua for her kindness of creating the human race. Finally, the two of them bowed to each other to show mutual respect. After the ceremony, the human path manifested. Golden clouds filled the world, turning into a bright golden glow that draped over the two of them, making them look exceptionally noble. This was the protection of the human path. From then on, the two of them were invincible. After the human path manifested a miracle, the heavenly path manifested as well. Above the sky, auspicious clouds gathered, auspicious chi fell, and boundless golden light appeared. That was the black-yellow merit. After the two of them finished the ceremony, it was a sign that they were married. The Xianhuang merit points naturally descended. Rumble. Vast amounts of merit fell from the 9 heavens. Although it was less than 1,000th of a sage's Tao, it could not be underestimated. With a whistling sound, it poured into the two of them. Feng Zichen was fine. He was powerful and not a quasi-sage, but he was better than a quasi-sage. The chi of merit that entered his body was completely inadequate and of little help to him. With a thought, Shao Chen put away the chi of virtue, saving it for his own use. But Chang Yi was different. Her cultivation in her previous life had been sealed by someone. Now, she had just entered the Tai Jinxian realm. When the chi of merit entered her body, before she could react, it all turned into cultivation and began to improve her realm. In an instant, Chang Yi's realm began to soar rapidly. Middle Tai Jinxian, late Tai Jinxian. In a few breaths, she had improved to the perfected Tai Jinxian realm, and it was still improving rapidly. Boom! Finally, with a loud boom, Chang Yi seemed to have broken some kind of boundary. She transcended from the river of destiny and came to the river of time and space. At this moment, she had become Daluo Jinxian. The merit of marriage directly raised Chang Yi's realm from Tai Jinxian to Daluo Jinxian, becoming an expert of the primitive world in one fell swoop. Fortunately, although Chang Yi's true spirit had been sealed, her essence would not change. She was still in the quasi-sage realm, a supreme expert who had begun to transcend the river of time and space. Now that she had become Daluo Jinxian again, it was just recovering her cultivation. It would not cause any damage to her foundation, nor would there be any drawbacks. It would not affect her combat strength. Directly using merit to improve one's cultivation might have undetectable drawbacks, but using merit to recover one's cultivation was completely harmless. If the human body was compared to a cup, increasing one's realm meant increasing the capacity of the cup to accommodate more power. Naturally, one had to be very careful and not make the slightest mistake. And recovering one's cultivation was like pouring water into a cup. One only needed to crazily absorb the energy of heaven and earth. This was much simpler, and there were not so many scruples. Black-yellow merit was a kind of energy of heaven and earth, and it was one of the highest powers. Chapter 450. Using it to recover one's cultivation was naturally beneficial and not harmful at all. It was just a little extravagant. However, for the current Chang, recovering her cultivation was the most important thing. Being a little extravagant was nothing. Boom! After her strength reached the level of Daluo Jinxian, the innate true spirit in Chang, Yi's body was awakening. The power that belonged to Wang Shu began to recover, trying to break through the seal set by Di Jun and the others and descend into the world again. Unfortunately, the seal that suppressed Wang Shu's innate, undying true spirit was set up by Di Jun, Fuxi, and Wang Shu together. How strong were these three gods? Since ancient times, there were only a few people who could stand shoulder to shoulder with them. The seal that they set up together could not be broken without the help of a saint. And Chang, Yi's current strength was only at the level of Daluo. How could she break it? Therefore, the power that belonged to Wang Shu, just as it showed signs of recovery, was suppressed by the seal left behind by Di Jun and the others without any resistance. It continued to lurk, waiting for the next recovery. Who is it? The moment the marriage was completed, Di Jun flew into a rage in the Lingshao Hall above the heavenly court. His majestic divine consciousness surged out and swept across the entire untainted land. Those who married 3 times discussed the secrets of heaven and earth and described the Tao of Yin and Yang. It was the creation of all living beings. The combination of Yin and Yang gave birth to creation and then gave birth to all living beings, bringing endless vitality to the untainted land. This was called endless creation. Those who could marry 3 times were all people favored by heaven and earth and had the bearing of a celestial emperor. Otherwise, how could they be qualified to represent heaven and earth to explain the creation of Yin and Yang? Just like Di Jun, as a celestial emperor, he could marry people according to the heavenly Tao. The person who married people must be a figure born from the Tao. As the lord of all living beings, he could shake his position as a celestial emperor. In this case, how could Di Jun not be angry? When a celestial emperor was angry, heaven and earth changed colors. At this moment, heaven and earth suddenly became incomparably oppressive, and a murderous intent filled the air. All the living beings in the untainted land felt an inexplicable sense of fear in their hearts at the same time. It was as if they were facing a terrifying demon god. An unbearable pressure hit their hearts, causing them to tremble uncontrollably. Boom! Di Jun's divine consciousness descended from the 9 heavens. An unparalleled power erupted, distorting space-time and even interfering with the operation of heaven and earth. In a place where no one could see, Di Jun's spiritual sense seemed to have transcended time and space, standing at the end of time and space, overlooking the passage of time. In a trance, time paused at this moment. At this moment, everything that had happened in the untainted land was clearly reflected in Di Jun's mind. Feng Zichen, do you know that you're courting death? In an instant, Di Jun found the source of everything, the human Feng Zichen. In the next moment, boundless killing intent gushed out from Di Jun's body, shattering the boundless void as it pounced towards Feng Zichen. On the shore of the East Sea, the boundary that Niwa had set up to protect the human race seemed to have lost its effect under Di Jun's power. That boundless killing intent directly ignored Niwa's enchantment and enveloped everyone at the wedding venue. How terrifying! What a terrifying killing intent! What's going on with this suffocating feeling? In an instant, everyone felt the surrounding temperature plummet, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This was a chill that came from the soul, causing great fear and the shadow of death to loom over their hearts. Fortunately, although Niwa's enchantment seemed useless, it was still somewhat useful. After passing through Niwa's enchantment, Di Jun's killing intent had weakened layer by layer and was much weaker than before. Otherwise, everyone present, except for Dalio Jinxian, would have been wiped out by Di Jun's killing intent. How could it be like now? Apart from feeling fear, there was nothing abnormal. Di Jun was just this powerful. Humph! Sensing the changes in the surroundings, Feng Zichen couldn't help but snort coldly. An invisible force erupted, shaking the void and forming ripples, shattering Di Jun's killing intent. Although Di Jun was strong, it was impossible for him to kill Feng Zichen with just a strand of killing intent. Not to mention him. Even a saint couldn't do it. Therefore, Feng Zichen easily shattered Di Jun's killing intent. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? After doing all this, Feng Zichen asked in a deep voice. Di Jun was the celestial emperor personally conferred by the Tao ancestor and had obtained the recognition of the heavenly Tao. Even a saint would have to address him as Your Majesty to show respect. Feng Zichen was naturally no exception. In the sky above the East Sea, Di Jun's shadow silently appeared. He stared coldly at Feng Zichen and didn't say anything for a long time. In the end, he said silently, You're very good. Primordial sword ancestor, sorcerer of the witch race, great Taoist priests Pango, human emperor Zichen clan. I admit that I underestimated you previously. I didn't expect you to cause such a big commotion. There's a faint trend of shaking my position, but from now on I won't. You've succeeded in attracting my attention. Humph. After saying that, Di Jun didn't make a move. Instead, he withdrew his spiritual will. This made Feng Zichen, who was secretly vigilant, let out a long sigh of relief. To be honest, he was no match for Di Jun at all. Although he was the great Taoist priests and Dalio Jinxian was invincible, Di Jun's realm was half-step primordial chaos. He had long surpassed the scope of Dalio Jinxian and mastered incredible power. He could subvert cognition and distort concepts. Don't underestimate this half-step. This was the gap between heaven and earth. This was an insurmountable gap. One was to prove the Tao and verify the Tao. The other was to achieve the Tao and be the Tao. Their strength couldn't be compared. Feng Zichen could roughly guess the reason why Di Jun didn't make a move today. It wasn't that he wasn't confident in killing him, but that he didn't have the courage to fight an all-out war with the witch race. He didn't want to offend Niwa, who was behind him. After all, Feng Zichen was also a sorcerer of the witch race. Niwa was the face of the primordial world. If Di Jun attacked him, the 12 ancestral sorcerers wouldn't sit back and watch. Niwa wouldn't sit back and watch. In this way, the range of the impact would be wide. If things went wrong, it might trigger the great battle of the liches in advance. And Di Jun would never allow such a thing to happen. The current demon race was not prepared to fight an all-out war with the witch race. If they fought rashly, the chances of winning were not very high. Moreover, even if they could win, the price was not something that the current demon race could bear. Thinking of this, Di Jun retreated and didn't kill Feng Zichen. He didn't kill him today for a better future. When the demon race defeated the witch race, a mere Taoist priest would be nothing. Phew! Di Jun's retreat not only made Feng Zichen heave a sigh of relief, but also made everyone present heave a sigh of relief. It was as if a huge stone hanging in their hearts had finally fallen to the ground. June had put too much pressure on them. The feeling of not being in control of life and death was even more unforgettable. Speaking of which, most of the people present had grown up listening to the legend of June. They had lived under his majesty since they were young. It was inevitable that they were afraid of him. The Celestial Emperor is still so terrifying. At this moment, not only the people at the wedding venue, but also the countless living beings in the primordial world once again felt the power of the Celestial Emperor. After all, June's killing intent was earth-shattering. The entire primordial world was alarmed. Countless living beings prostrated themselves under his majesty and trembled. The scene was too terrifying. Who wouldn't be afraid? Ever since the birth of the 6 saints, the Celestial Emperor's majesty had been declining day by day. As a result, many people of the new generation did not take the Celestial Emperor seriously and thought that in the primordial world, the saints were the most powerful. But today, June had used his invincible strength to tell the world that he was not a match for Yi Qingtang. The primordial world was still his world. Even if the saints were in the world, they could not shake his position. Your Majesty is invincible. The heavenly court, the 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 palaces, as well as Zhouxing and hundreds of millions of small stars. Above them, the demon race living among them suddenly let out the most pious cry after feeling June's majesty. June was their faith. Although they didn't know why June was angry, this didn't stop them from expressing the excitement in their hearts. The moment he made a move, he suppressed the entire primordial world. With such powerful strength, how many people in the world could be a match for him? They were cheering for June's strength. Your Majesty is invincible. Your Majesty is invincible. At first, this cry only spread in the heavenly court and the sea of stars. But as the cry spread, it spread wider and wider, and the voice became louder and louder. Gradually, it connected and resounded throughout the entire starry sky. Then it spread out from the starry sky and resounded in the sky above the primordial world, ringing in the ears of all living beings. Celestial Emperor. In a trance, the image of a majestic emperor seemed to appear in the hearts of all living beings. It was incomparably domineering, incomparably precious, and shook people's hearts. Ancient memories were awakening. The scene of the Celestial Emperor suppressing the primordial world in the past appeared in the hearts of all living beings again, making them understand. This primordial world was still the primordial world. The liches were the true masters of the world. They had always been so and had never changed. Even the appearance of a saint could not change this point. It did not shake their rule. It had to be said that although June did not get rid of the trouble of Fengzichen this time, it had really intimidated all living beings in the primordial world. It made them feel the majesty of the heavenly court again and put away the thoughts that they should not have. Although June had left, the atmosphere at the wedding venue could no longer return to the previous cheerful atmosphere. After all, Fengzichen had offended the Celestial Emperor. For a moment, the hearts of everyone present wavered. Other than the hardcore allies of the human race, many people had the intention to leave. In recent years, the human race had become more and more powerful. Therefore, when Fengzichen got married, other than the allies of the human race, many of the surrounding races also sent people to congratulate him. According to their original intention, they had only come to congratulate him. Who knew that such a huge change would happen at the scene? This was unbearable. If the Celestial Emperor remembered them and thought that they were allies of the human race, he would destroy them. That would be terrible. Regret. Extreme regret. If they had known that the human emperor and the Celestial Emperor had a grudge, they would not have come to join in the fun. Their relationship with the human race was not so good that they would live and die together. Everyone. The human race has the protection of the Nuwa. Although the Celestial Emperor is strong, the Empress is not weak either. In the end, he has to care about the Empress's face and will not go too far. Seeing everyone's expressions, Feng Zichen naturally guessed their thoughts. He could not help but stand up and speak loudly. Yes, yes. Not to mention that the Nuwa is a saint. Even when the demon race was first established, the Empress was once the demon emperor and was as respected as His Majesty. The Celestial Emperor will not go too far. Everyone thought about it and felt that it made sense. Otherwise, why would the Celestial Emperor retreat? Wouldn't it be fine if he just crushed the human emperor to death? With this thought in mind, they put their hearts back into their stomachs and continued to drink and have fun. If Feng Zichen had talked about other saints, everyone might not have been so polite. However, Nuwa was different. Back then, in order to expand the influence of the demon race, Dijun specially invited Nuwa and Fushi to join the demon race at the beginning of the demon race's establishment. They were known as the 4 emperors of the demon race in history. After that, the heavenly court was established. Fushi was worried that a place like the heavenly court, where karma was entangled, would drag down Nuwa and prevent her from becoming a saint. Therefore, Fushi stepped forward bravely and used his heaven-defying divine ability to attribute all the karma between Nuwa and the demon race to himself. This allowed Nuwa to be able to escape and completely sever her relationship with the demon race so that she could become a saint in peace. However, although Nuwa had left the demon race, she still had a lot of influence on the demon race. In addition, Fushi was still in the demon race. It could be said that Nuwa was still one of the overlords of the demon race and had great power in the demon race. The demon refining gourd was in Nuwa's hands. If you're disobedient, do you want to go in and try? Of course. This was under the premise that it did not involve Dijun. He still respected Nuwa very much. However, if he touched Dijun's foundation, not to mention Nuwa, even Fushi would not be able to do it. He would still make a move when he had to. For example, just now the coast of the East Sea was enveloped by Nuwa's barrier. If Dijun really cared about Nuwa, how could he brazenly make a move? It could be seen that, for Nuwa's face, it might not be very useful to Dijun. However, Dijun knew this, Nuwa knew it, and Feng Zichen also knew it. However, the guests below did not know it. This did not prevent Feng Zichen from fooling them. Feng Zichen was also very helpless. Today was his big day. If the wedding was halfway through and everyone left, then he would lose a lot of face today. Left with no other choice, Feng Zichen could only come up with this plan to make everyone stay. At this moment, even if someone saw through it, they would not leave. That was because there was another meaning in Feng Zichen's words. You don't dare to offend Dijun, but do you dare to offend Nuwa? Therefore, it was best to stay and attend the wedding in peace. A Khanate god-fiend born from the origin of creation. This Pangu's Zichen clan is really lucky to be able to find such a woman to marry. How enviable! In the void, streams of ancient spirit wills were colliding and communicating with one another. These were the great magicians of the primordial world. Whether it was the appearance of a human marriage or Dijun's attack, they were all worthy of their attention. Therefore, after Dijun stopped, they deliberately cast their gazes and secretly observed the main character of this event. Of course, they were no stranger to Feng Zichen. Chang Yi, on the other hand, shocked them. This was another Khanate god-fiend that had never appeared before, and it was a Khanate god-fiend born from the origin of creation. How strange! In the primordial world, although there were many Khanate god-fiends, they referred to ordinary Khanate god-fiends. Top Khanate god-fiends like Kuan Pengjin Yuanzi were still very rare. Every Khanate god-fiend with such aptitude was worth paying attention to. In the future, they might be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. Fortunately, Goddess Nuwa made preparations in advance. Otherwise, it would be dangerous today. Feeling the gazes focused on the two of them, Feng Zichen frowned, but he could not help but secretly rejoice. Long ago, Nuwa had expected such a situation. She deliberately tampered with Chang, Yi, and used the origin of creation to conceal Chang, Yi's true identity. Otherwise, Chang Yi's true identity would not be hidden from the eyes of these old fellows. Then, Feng Zichen was in big trouble. Taking a connate god-fiend with the creation attribute and marrying an ancient moon god with the fate of empress were obviously two different concepts. No matter how tolerant Dijun was, he probably could not tolerate her. Fortunately, Nua's understanding of the Tao of creation was extremely deep and could be said to be the best in the primordial world. She personally covered up Chang Yi, and it was almost fake. There were no more than 3 people in the primordial world who could see through it. Speaking of which, Nua and Fuxi were clearly connate god-fiends born from the Tao of Yin and Yang, but they each broke their own boundaries and walked their own paths. One achieved the Tao through creation, and the other achieved the Tao through the connate 8 trigrams. It was amazing. This was also one of the reasons why Feng Zichen firmly believed that Nuwa was not simple. People said that although Nuwa was the first of the 6 saints to achieve the Tao, her strength was the weakest among the saints because she relied too much on merit. In Feng Zichen's opinion, this was undoubtedly very funny. Not to mention that among the 6 saints, which one of them did not achieve the Tao through merit, just the fact that Nuwa had walked her own path early was enough to prove her extraordinariness. Those who underestimated her would pay the price in the end. The merit obtained from creating a human was merit, but the merit obtained from establishing a sect was not merit. The 6 saints of the primordial world all became saints by virtue, without exception. Among them, Nuwa became a saint by completing the human path. Therefore, she had been enlightened by the human path. Her foundation was so deep that it was far from the 5 saints who established sects to become saints. In the primordial world, only Tao ancestor Hongjun, who had been enlightened by the heavenly path, and goddess Hutu, who had been enlightened by the earth path, could be on par with her. Nuwa's strength was definitely top-notch among the saints. It was far from being as simple as it seemed. Sun Star, Sun Temple. After returning here, Dijun could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and could not help but roar loudly. Bastard! What a bastard! This was the birthplace of Dijun and Tai. It was also the ancestral land of the Golden Crow clan. It was also the supreme, holy land of the Demon clan. Few outsiders could set foot in it. Therefore, only here could Dijun roar loudly without caring about his image and vent the anger in his heart to his heart's content. Thus, he did not have to worry about being discovered by outsiders and damaging the dignity of the Celestial Emperor. Big brother, why are you so angry? Although Feng Zichen's status is noble, he is just a Daluo Jinxian. Even if he is invincible in this realm, he is still a Daluo Jinxian. As long as he does not exceed this range, he is just a slightly bigger ant to us 2 brothers. When you and I take that crucial step, no matter if he is the sword ancestor or the great Taoist priests, we can destroy him with a flick of our fingers. There is no need to take it to heart. On the other side, after Dijun vented the anger in his heart, Tai came forward and advised. From his words, he did not take Feng Zichen seriously at all. It was as if he was not talking about some great medium of the untainted land, but some other ant. However, he was Tai, the top expert of the untainted land, the real number 1 person of the Demon clan. He was even stronger than Dijun and Fuxi. Others were not qualified to look down on Feng Zichen, but he was. Although his cultivation had not reached the level of Daluo Jinxian, his strength had long reached this realm. In front of him, Daluo Jinxian was indeed not much different from an ant. Only a half-step primordial chaos expert was worthy of his scorn. As the great Taoist priests, Feng Zichen was naturally an extremely powerful existence in the eyes of Daluo Jinxian. However, in the eyes of a half-step primordial chaos overlord, he was nothing. Without personally touching the realm of the primordial chaos Tao realm, one would never know the power of that realm. It was the Tao, the truth and the law. Its power was endless and contained everything. The current untainted land was different from the untainted land in Feng Zichen's memory. Its overall strength had improved by a level. Experts of the great perfection of the sage-to-be were no longer the peak below the saint. Above them, there was the existence of half-step primordial chaos. This was the current peak of the untainted land. However, it might not be long before half-step primordial chaos experts were eliminated. This was because Di Jun, Tai Dijiang, and the leaders of the shaman and demon clans were about to take the last half-step and cultivate to the primordial chaos Tao realm, which was comparable to the saints. At that time, the saying that the saints were invincible would really become a legend. Originally, after Feng Zichen became the great Taoist priests, he should have been the strongest existence below the saints. However, under his manipulation, the strength of the untainted land had been promoted as a whole. As a result, although his strength was strong, he was far from being invincible. He was still suppressed by others. Fate was playing tricks on people. This was nothing more than that. Second brother, you don't understand. Shaking his head, Di Jun replied, I don't understand. I don't understand again. Or is big brother worried that he will be one step ahead of the two of us and become the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian before us? Seeing Di Jun like this, Tai felt a little sad. Ever since the fall of the 9 golden crows, Di Jun's invincible Tao heart had been flawed. He was no longer as great as before. Therefore, when he spoke, he could not help but have a hint of provocation, trying to reawaken Di Jun's ambition. Sure enough, although the provocation was simple, it was extremely useful. After listening to Tai's provocation, Di Jun's eyes could not help but turn cold. Afraid? Why would I be afraid? If it weren't for the witch race and fellow Taoist Niwa, I could kill him with one finger. As if he was very dissatisfied with Tai's words, Di Jun's tone could not help but carry a trace of displeasure, and the aura on his body was released. Boom! At this moment, Di Jun's aura was like a rainbow. The aura of the Emperor was vast and mighty. The aura of the Celestial Emperor was completely displayed. It suppressed the universe and swept across the myriad worlds. However, there was no joy in Tai's heart, only sadness. He could not go back. He really could not go back. Di Jun was no longer the Di Jun from before. If it were in the past, when Tai used such a shallow provocation, Di Jun would only laugh it off. He would not have such a big reaction like today. Chapter 451. There was indeed a problem with Di Jun's Taoist heart. Of course, this was not necessarily a bad thing for Di Jun. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. When Di Jun's Taoist heart completely recovered, it would be the time for him to become the primordial Daluo Jinxian. However, if Di Jun's Taoist heart could not recover, then he would not have the chance to become the primordial Daluo Jinxian in this lifetime. The primordial chaos was about the great Tao being as one and the Taoist heart being perfect and flawless. If one's Taoist heart was damaged, it was already very good to be able to maintain his current strength. It was impossible to hope to take another step forward. Di Jun's anger seemed to be nothing, but the impact was not small. He was the master of the Sun Star, and his every move was in accordance with the Sun Star. His aura suddenly erupted, and the Sun Star immediately reacted. Endless heat waves swept out, shocking the entire starry sky. Looking up from the primitive land, one would only feel that the sun was even more dazzling. However, the demons living in the boundless starry sky were firmly affected. They felt that the surrounding yang energy suddenly rose, and a terrifying high temperature attacked, burning everything like a furnace. For a moment, most of the demon warriors could not help but tremble in fear. They did not know who had angered His Majesty, causing him to be furious. Big brother, calm down. There were thousands of thoughts in his heart, but Tai Yi did not show any of them. He stepped forward and came to Di Jun's side to calm him down. "Little brother, your method of goading me into action isn't very clever. However, it is extremely useful." At this moment, Di Jun suddenly calmed down and said to Tai Yi with a smile. With the change in Di Jun's mood, the restlessness of the sun star gradually subsided, and the boundless starry sky regained its tranquility. After all, it was the place where he was born. Returning here, Di Jun's heart seemed to have been baptized. There was a mysterious force protecting him, removing all negative effects for him. "Big brother, has your Taoist heart recovered?" Seeing the change in Di Jun, Tai Yi was overjoyed and hurriedly asked. At this moment, Di Jun was what Di Jun should be like in his heart. Confident, flamboyant, fierce. "No, it's just that after returning here, the power of the sun has been added to my body, temporarily suppressing the negative effects brought about by the loss of my Tao heart." Shaking his head, Di Jun said in a deep voice, "Ever since the fall of the 9 golden crows, this was the first time he had returned to his birthplace. He didn't expect such a wonderful change to occur that could suppress all negative emotions. Don't worry." Here, Di Jun felt extremely relieved. It was this feeling that made him temporarily put down the pain of losing his son, and his wounded heart was comforted. "Oh, the sun god temple has such a function. It seems that we still don't know enough about our birthplace." Tai Yi raised his eyebrows in surprise. It was the first time they had discovered that the sun god temple had such a function. In the past, the sun god temple's function was to gather the power of the sun. This was naturally very important at the beginning of their cultivation. It could speed up their cultivation. However, after they became Daluo Jinxian, they no longer needed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The sun god temple's effect on them became negligible. Other than having some commemorative significance, it didn't have much value. However, the sun star was formed by Panga's left eye. How could the Khanate temple that was born in it be so simple? Of course, there were endless mysteries. It was just that Di Jun, Tai Yi, and the others didn't discover it. Or rather, there was some unknown power that suppressed the magic of the sun god temple and prevented outsiders from discovering it. However, treasures wouldn't be covered in dust forever. There would eventually be a time when they would reveal themselves. Di Jun, Tai Yi's death was imminent. As their common mother, the sun star couldn't bear to see her child die. Driven by instinct, she activated the sun god temple and reproduced the power of this supreme treasure. The power of the sun star spread throughout the primordial world and the myriad worlds. How great was that? Even a saint couldn't compare to it. If she wanted to activate a supreme treasure, who could stop her? Even the power that suppressed the sun god hall was unable to contend against the might of the sun star. It dispersed in an instant. That was why Di Jun's Tao heart was awakened. There's no hurry to investigate the sun god temple. It's here anyway. Can it run away? The most important thing now is to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Only by stepping into this realm can our demon race have the capital to defeat the Magi. Otherwise, who can compete with the Lady of Earth among the demon race? Thinking of the Lady of Earth, Di Jun couldn't help but feel a little heavy. She was a true saint. If she interfered in the battle between the Magi and the demons, there would be many variables in this battle. Although if Di Jun asked Nuwa to deal with the Lady of Earth using their relationship with the demons back then, Nuwa would definitely not refuse. However, it was not Di Jun's character to place his hopes on others. If his hopes were not on himself, it would always make him feel uneasy. Therefore, it was better to place his hopes on himself. In the end, people still had to rely on themselves. Breaking through to the primordial chaos was the only way Di Jun could think of to deal with the Lady of Earth with his own strength. The primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian was a realm that was comparable to a saint, Other than not being able to borrow the power of the heavenly Tao, there was almost no difference between him and a saint. This was the true capital to compete with a saint. That's right. Only by becoming the primordial Chaos Daluo Jinxian can our demon race defeat the Magi. Nodding, Tai said with a solemn expression, the shaman tribe was too blessed by the heavens. As a race formed from Panga's bloodline, other than being tainted by the baleful aura of the heavens, they did not have any flaws. They could be said to be perfect. The demon race could not compare to them. It could be said that since the birth of the demon race, they had been suppressed by the Magi. Even if the demon race occupied Zhouxing, occupied the heaven realm, and established the heavenly court, they only had the capital to compete with the Magi. They could not win the battle and were still at a disadvantage. Since the Sun God Temple can suppress the injuries on my Tao heart, I'll cultivate in seclusion here and strive to reach the primordial chaos Tao realm as soon as possible. With a thought, Dijun made a decision. If he wanted to recover his Tao heart and break through to the primordial chaos Tao realm in the shortest time possible, he could only do it here. In other places, although Dijun was confident that he could reach the primordial chaos Tao realm, it would take a long time. Now the great battle between the Magi and the demon race was imminent. What the demon race lacked the most was time. Dijun could not delay. Oh, don't worry, big brother. Just cultivate in seclusion. I'm about to break through too. When the time comes, you and I will reach the Tao together. If word gets out, it will be a good story. It's just a pity that fellow Taoist Fuxi hasn't accumulated enough. He's still quite a distance away from becoming a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. I'm afraid he won't be able to break through before the battle between the Magi and the demon race. Seeing Dijun like this, Tai was naturally happy. However, when he thought of Fuxi, he felt that it was a pity. In terms of aptitude, they were all Khanate saints. Fuxi was not inferior to the two brothers. In terms of status, the three of them were all the three emperors of the demon race. The difference in status was not big. However, even so, Dijun, Tai, and Tai were still a step away from reaching the primordial chaos Tao realm. As for Fuxi, he was still quite a distance away. He was far inferior to the two of them. The reason was because of the difference in birth. Dijun and Tai were born on the sun star. It could be said that they were born from the top of the primordial world. Even the three pure ones could not compare to them. The light of the sun shone on the primordial world, bringing endless vitality to the earth. This was an immeasurable amount of merit. Moreover, as long as the sun was not extinguished, the merit would not be cut off. As for Dijun and Tai, they were born to enjoy this merit. This was the real reason why they could become celestial emperors. If they wanted to become celestial emperors, they would need to be extremely lucky. Only an existence like the sun star, which was blessed by the entire primordial world, could support it. With the protection of the sun star, no matter how great Dijun and Tai's achievements were, it would not be surprising. It could be said that the two of them could cultivate to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian while lying down. However, this would take a long time. As for Fuxi, he was born in the Chiefing Mountain. Although it could be called a top grotto heaven in the primordial world, it was far from being comparable to the sun star. This caused the gap between him and Dijun, and Tai. He was born this way. What could he do? In terms of background, there were not many people in the primordial world who could compare to Dijun and Tai. With Fuxi's talent, if the battle between the Lich and the demon race could be delayed by a few hours, he might be able to cultivate to the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. However, there was really not enough time. This could only be said to be Fuxi's bad luck. Sigh. Everyone has their own fate. Fellow Taoist Fuxi doesn't have this luck. There's nothing we can do. Dijun was very open-minded about this matter. Ever since Fuxi joined the demon race, he had never mistreated Fuxi. Whatever the two brothers had, he would definitely give Fuxi a share to prevent him from being unhappy. Even so, Fushi could not cultivate to the primordial chaos Tao realm. It could only be said that his fate was not enough. Big brother, what are you talking about? If fellow Taoist Fushi also reaches the primordial chaos Tao realm, wouldn't we have a higher chance of winning against the witch race? Jun's attitude vaguely made Tai a little unhappy. He knew that Jun did not like Nuwa and Fushi very much. If not for the fact that the witch race was so powerful that the two brothers could not compete with them, Jun would not have invited Fushi and Nuwa to join the demon race, nor would he have given them such a high status. This was because he had no choice but to use their strength to fight against the witch race. However, it was true that the existence of Nuwa and Fushi had taken away Jun's power. This made him very unhappy. Perhaps this was the nature of an emperor. He had an abnormal passion for power. However, it would have been fine if it had been any other time. However, now that the demon race was on the verge of extinction, it was a little too much for Jun to still be like this. One had to know that Fushi had contributed greatly to the demon race being where they were today. Brother, you worry too much. When you and I become primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian, there will be no suspense in the battle between the witch race and the demon race. Our demon race will definitely win. At that time, fellow Taoist Fushi might be able to achieve the Tao in one fell swoop with the momentum of a great victory. Jun smiled and said nonchalantly, in the future, there was no need for Fushi. The two brothers were enough for the demon race. Fushi was a little redundant. He could use this opportunity to get rid of Fushi. After all, the demon race still needed Fushi's help in the past. But now he was not so important. The demon race. They had already passed the most difficult time. If the demon race defeated the witch race, they would become the only protagonist of the world. Jun would also become the true number one person in the primordial world. Tai was his only younger brother. He could share the glory with him and be respected as the East Emperor. But Fushi was an outsider. Why should he be respected as him? Wasn't this annoying? Moreover, Fushi was backed by Nuwa. This was even more intolerable for Jun. The combined influence of the two of them was already enough to shake Jun's rule. As the emperor, how could he tolerate such a thing to happen? Therefore, Fushi had to die, and he had to die in the hands of the witch race. This way, he would be able to arouse Nuwa's anger and make her attack the witch race without caring about anything. Then, the demon race's chances of winning would undoubtedly be greater. Using his own death to achieve the hegemony of the demon race. How magnificent! How magnificent! This could also be considered Emperor Shi's final contribution to the demon race. Thinking of this, Jun glanced at Tai and could not help but shake his head. This younger brother of his was still too sentimental. But if Fushi did not die, the demon race would always have hidden dangers. Other than Fushi's plan, Jun did not plan to tell Tai or anyone else. Firstly, he knew that Tai and Fushi had a good relationship. If he told Tai about this plan, he would definitely stop him. Secondly, Fushi was a grandmaster of divination. If he secretly schemed against him, it would be fine if he thought about it. If he said it out loud, he would definitely sense it and create variables. Second brother, let's not talk about Fushi. You, on the other hand, big brother, you should really apologize. If you weren't dragged down by me with your talent, it would be easy for you to reach the primordial chaos path realm. Surpassing the saint would only be a matter of time. Now that you are being suppressed by the saint, it is all my fault. Seeing that Tai still wanted to say something, Jun hurriedly changed the topic. If they kept talking about Fushi like this, it was very likely that they would be sensed by him. They had to be on guard. However, these words were indeed spoken by Jun from the bottom of his heart. Tai meant big. One meant one of Tao begets one. From this name, one could tell how extraordinary Tai was. He was the existence with the best aptitude in the primordial world after Tao ancestor Hongjun. In the era when Tao ancestor did not appear, Tai was the number one in the primordial world. Even the three pure ones did not dare to compete with him. Even without the Hongmeng purple chi, it would be easy for him to reach the primordial chaos path realm. But he did not, because he joined the heavenly court. The heavenly court was the place with the most karma in the primordial world. A long time ago, Tai Yi's realm had already risen to the primordial chaos path realm. Otherwise, he would not have been able to suppress the two of them alone when he was guiding them to become saints. However, due to the burden of the heavenly court, the karma on his body was entangled. He was unable to take the last half step and reach the realm that was comparable to saints. Only then was he surpassed by the 6 saints step by step. Dijun was not wrong when he said that it was all his fault that Tai could not reach the primordial chaos path realm. That was the truth. It was also what Dijun felt guilty about. Chapter 452. If he had known that the heavenly court would drag down Tai's cultivation, Dijun would not have let Tai join the heavenly court no matter what. His original intention of establishing the heavenly court was to gather the providence of heaven and earth to assist the two of them in their cultivation. However, things did not go as he wished. He did gain benefits, but Tai did not. Dijun regretted it. Without the heavenly court, Tai would have attained the Tao early on, primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Even if he was not as fast as the 6 saints, he would not be much slower. He would not be farther and farther away like today. On the path of cultivation, one step slower would lead to another. Especially for people with outstanding talent like them, if they were one step slower, it would be difficult for them to catch up. Unfortunately, when Dijun realized this, it was already too late. The karma between Tai and the heavenly court had long been entangled. It was almost impossible for him to escape and leave. He could only brace himself and continue forward. Nuwa was more alert. She had escaped early and escaped the quagmire of the heavenly court. If Tai had left with Nuwa back then, his fate today might have been very different. Dijun established the heavenly court and achieved himself, but he destroyed Tai. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had used Tai's future to exchange for his own. If such a thing had happened between other brothers, they would have fallen out long ago. However, Dijun and Tai were different. The friendship between them was too strong. Their brotherhood was moving. It was even better than the relationship between the 12 ancestral shamans. Dijun could scheme against everyone, but he would not scheme against Tai. Tai's strength was clearly stronger than Dijun's. He also possessed the connate cardinal treasure, the Bell of Chaos. He could be said to be the number 1 person in the heavenly court. However, he was willing to submit to Dijun and fight for him to conquer the vast territory ruled by the demon race. It could be said that his brother's relationship with him was deep. After all, although the demon race was big, there were only 2 golden crows born from the connate. Big brother, don't say that. This is my own choice. Seeing Dijun blaming himself so much, Tai hurriedly said, it was not entirely Dijun's fault, who knew that the heavenly court was a trap. In the beginning, Tai had indeed benefited from the celestial court. His cultivation progressed rapidly, and it didn't take long for him to reach the half-step origin Tao realm. It was also at that time that Tai realized that something was wrong. No matter how hard he tried, he could not break through the last half-step. After pondering for a long time, he realized that it was because of the heavenly courts. Unfortunately, he understood it too late. Besides, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be stuck in the realm for so many years. This will make my foundation more solid and my accumulation more profound. With a strong foundation, I may not be weaker than the 3 pure ones. After a while, seeing that his persuasion was useless, Tai changed his words and continued persuading. That's true. Second brother's talent is the best in the primordial world. Even if he attained the Tao later than the three pure ones, he would still be weaker than them. As expected, Di Jun's eyes lit up when he heard Tai Yi's words. Tai Yi's talent was indisputable. There were many connate saints in the primordial world, but Tai Yi was the only one who was born with a connate cardinal treasure. This explained everything. It was not impossible for Tai Yi to overtake others on the path of cultivation. Second brother, it's good that you're confident. Big brother, you have to work hard too. Otherwise, when you become a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian, and I'm still in the Sage-to-Be realm, I'll be letting you down for all these years. For the heavenly courts, Tai Yi had delayed his future. If Di Jun could not break through to the primordial chaos Dao realm, he would not have the face to stand in the primordial world even if others did not say anything. Yes, big brother, don't worry and go into seclusion. I'm going into seclusion too. I have a feeling that I'm not far away from attaining the Tao. When the time comes, you and I will attain the Tao together. I think the faces of the Magi will be very interesting. Thinking of the expressions of the ancestral race after the two of them attain the Tao, even Tai Yi's state of mind could not help but fluctuate. He joked with Di Jun for a long time. Tai Yi hated the 12 ancestral Magi to the core. If it was a one-on-one battle, Tai Yi was confident that he would win even if he did not use the Bell of Chaos. However, the 12 ancestral Magi never fought with him one-on-one. They always swarmed him and beat him until he had no temper. It was really sullen. Yes. When the time comes, we'll definitely teach the Magi a lesson. Tai Yi's words touched Di Jun's heart. He nodded repeatedly. Yes, Tai Yi will not disturb big brother's seclusion. I'll leave first. At this point, there was nothing to talk about. Only a breakthrough was the right thing to do. Therefore, Tai Yi planned to go back into seclusion. However, before he left, he saw Di Jun frown and say, "Although I don't take the Zichin clan seriously, I can't let him have an easy time. Otherwise, won't the world think that the demon clan is easy to bully? If everyone is like him, wantonly provoking the demon clan without paying the price, then where is the dignity of the demon clan?" Di Jun suddenly thought of Feng Zichin and planned to teach him a lesson to warn all living beings in the primordial world. That's right. If this person is not punished, the dignity of the demon clan will not be shown. However, among the demon clan, only you, me, and Fushi can defeat Feng Zichin. And you and I have no time to attack. Because of his identity, Fushi will not attack him. The rest might not be his match. That's a little difficult. Thinking of this, Tai Yi frowned. With Feng Zichin's strength, unless it was a half-step primordial chaos expert, no one would be his match. However, only Di Jun, Tai Yi, and Fushi had such an expert in the demon clan. Di Jun, Tai Yi was in seclusion and had no time to attack. Fushi was Niua's brother. Of course, he would not attack Niua's face. That left Kuan Peng and the others. These people were either quasi-saints or Daluo Jinxian. How could they be a match for the great Taoist priests? Difficult. Too difficult. If we can't deal with Feng Zichin, then we'll deal with the humans. Isn't he the human emperor? Then we'll use the blood of his people to wash away his sins. That's good. Everyone knows that this is the consequence of offending the demon clan. Di Jun sneered and said, Feng Zichin was not easy to deal with, but were the humans not easy to deal with? With the strength of the demon clan, the humans were at their mercy. That's not good. If we attack the humans rashly, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to explain to fellow Taoist Niua. Tai Yi was a little hesitant about Di Jun's suggestion. The humans were a race created by Niua. If they attacked them, wouldn't it be a slap to Niua's face? If the demon clan didn't have a good relationship with Niua, it would be fine if they offended her. However, Niua was an ally of the demon clan, and their relationship was extremely close. Wouldn't this be pushing Niua out? Second brother, Don't worry about fellow Taoist Nua. If she cared about the past, she wouldn't have let the Zichin clan get married at this juncture. Obviously, she wants to completely separate herself from the demon clan. Speaking of Nua, Jun's tone couldn't help but be a little angry. Feng Zichin was Nua's face in the primordial world. Nua must know that he was getting married. Perhaps she was supporting him behind the scenes. Nua knew the harm of human marriage to him, but Nua still did it. This was clearly not taking him seriously. How could Jun not be angry? This was also why Jun was dissatisfied with Nua. At that time, he ignored the barrier set up by Nua and directly attacked Feng Zichin. It might not be without this reason. Nua didn't give him any face. Then why should he give Nua any face? Big brother, I think you might be thinking too much. Fellow Taoist, Nua might not think so. After a while, Tai deliberated over his words and replied carefully. He really didn't believe that Nua would be like this. What good would it do her if the demon clan declined? Nua was different from other saints. There was a relationship between her and the demon clan. The stronger the demon clan was, the greater the benefits for her. If the demon clan declined, her interests would also be damaged. The gains did not make up for the losses. Besides, if a mere human marriage could shake the position of the Celestial Emperor, then the position of the Celestial Emperor would be too boring. It was better to abdicate early so that he wouldn't be ousted by others. Big brother, you're still a little petty. You've lost the spirit of the Celestial Emperor. Tai, he thought silently in his heart. Sigh. Second brother, you're still too emotional. You don't know how sinister people are. Jun was helpless towards his younger brother. Perhaps it was the confidence brought by his own strength, but Tai was often disdainful of conspiracies and tricks. He thought that those things were not presentable. He was also sincere towards his friends and never cared about gains and losses. Perhaps this was why Tai was so powerful. Only by being sincere in the Tao could one obtain the Tao. Tai had displayed this perfectly. Jun, on the other hand, was good at scheming. His state of mind had fallen, so he was not as good as Tai. All right, second brother, you don't have to worry too much. Since the human race has already walked out of the ancestral land, it means that they intend to join the battle for hegemony in the primordial world. Then it's understandable for the demon clan to attack the human race. Fellow Taoist Nua can't say much. She can't always protect the human race, right? Suppressing the thoughts in his heart, Jun said reasonably, if the human race wanted to grow stronger, it was impossible to rely on Nua's protection alone. Only by experiencing blood and fire could they establish a foothold in the primordial world. The demon clan attacking the human race was a form of training for the human race. Even if Nua was dissatisfied, she could only accept it. Even so, we can't go too far. When the demon clan attacks, let them avoid the human race's ancestral land. The human race in the other places will depend on their own fortune. Tai, he thought that it made sense and agreed to Jun's plan. However, he also added a restriction. They could not attack the human race's ancestral land to avoid completely angering Nua. Let's do as second brother says. Jun did not want to argue with Tai over such a small matter, so he simply agreed. Anyway, it was to teach Feng Zichin a lesson. It did not matter how many humans he killed as long as he achieved his goal. It was not a big deal to let some of them go. In this way, he could save Nua's face. Why not? Although Jun said happily, he could not bear to completely fall out with Nua. Now, the situation of the Lich was unclear. Nua was still useful to him. It was not a good time to fall out with her. He had to wait until the demon clan defeated the wizard clan and completely controlled the situation in the primordial world. At that time, Jun would have the capital to fall out with Nua. Under Jun's order, in the boundless starry sky, countless demon clans were ready to go to the lower world to find trouble with the human race at any time. And this would be the prelude to the massacre of humans by the demon clan. If Feng Zichen knew that the massacre of humans by the demon clan was caused by this, what would he think? The great calamity of the human race was about to arrive, but Feng Zichen did not sense it at all. That was because he was experiencing a joyous event in his life, entering the bridal chamber. As time passed, the wedding had reached the final stage, which was also the most important stage. The bride and groom entered the bridal chamber. Feng Zichen held Chang Yi's hand and walked into his bedroom amidst everyone's congratulations. Originally, according to Feng Zichen's original plan, at most he and Chang Yi were husband and wife on the surface. Once their true spirit awakened, this marriage would naturally end. But, men, most of them did not mean what they said. They ate in the bowl and looked at the pot. Chang Yi was such a beautiful woman, and she looked at him shyly. How could Feng Zichen tolerate it? On impulse, he threw all his plans to the back of his mind. Ha 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 ha. I think you can imagine it yourselves. Only this way is the most moving. After a night of wind and rain, Chang Yi collapsed in Feng Zichen's arms with a tired face. The light of the moon on her body surged and enveloped the two of them. On Feng Zichen's body, the light of the Khanate Supreme Yang flickered nonstop. It resonated with the light of the moon on Chang Yi's body and gradually merged into one, turning into a yin-yang taiji diagram. After that, a purple star rose from Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness and hung above the yin-yang taiji diagram. Wisps of purple gas hung down, reconciling yin and yang and operating the two modes. The yin-yang taiji diagram slowly rotated, and boundless Tao runes were produced. Tao and truth intertwined, and countless mysterious runes appeared and disappeared. The mysteries of the Khanate Tao of yin and yang appeared in the hearts of Feng Zichen and Chang Yi. The intersection of yin and yang was the most mysterious. With the Emperor Star in the middle to reconcile and operate the two modes, it added a bit of mystery. The two of them immediately fell into enlightenment. In a trance, Feng Zichen's understanding of the Khanate Tao of yin and yang deepened. The things that he didn't understand in the past were all understood now. The problems that he found difficult in the past were also extremely simple, as if he was suddenly enlightened. Moreover, the supreme divine power that he couldn't comprehend before, the Khanate Supreme Yang Divine Light, also had a rough idea now. A little bit of the moon light flickered in his body, entangling with the Khanate Supreme Yang Divine Light. They gradually evolved and corroborated each other, exploring the source of yin and yang together. It was getting closer to the Khanate Supreme Yang Divine Light, step by step. This was another supreme divine power that Feng Zichen dreamed of, the Khanate Supreme Yang Divine Light. Yin and yang gave birth to all things, and everything in the universe was in yin and yang. Therefore, the Khanate Supreme Yang Divine Light contained all things and could melt everything. It was extremely powerful. Moreover, this divine power could be combined with the Khanate Five Elements Divine Light to form another supreme divine power, the Khanate Five Elements Divine Light. In this world, there was almost no one who could escape from the Khanate Supreme Yang Divine Light. Once the Khanate Five Elements Divine Light was released, how many people in the universe could resist it? This supreme divine power was enough to be ranked in the top 10 of all the divine powers in the universe. It was a true weapon of mass destruction. Although Feng Zichen's understanding of the Khanate Five Elements Divine Light was not very deep, as his understanding of the Khanate Tao of yin and yang deepened, he would be able to understand this divine power sooner or later. While Feng Zichen's transformation was still ongoing, Chang Yi also began to change. The moon light on her body became denser and denser. Ancient and mysterious runes appeared and danced around her, drawing in strands of mysterious energy from the core of the lunar star to increase her cultivation. This was the power of the lunar pearl. Under the power of yin and yang, the lunar pearl was awakened. It absorbed the most fundamental energy from the lunar star to help Chang'e recover. However, with Shi guarding the lunar star, the lunar pearl did not dare to draw in the lunar star's power on a large scale to avoid attracting Shi's attention. It could only steal the power intermittently when Shi was unprepared. This way, although it was beneficial to Chang'e, it was far from enough to help her break the seal. It would take a long time for Wang Shu to reappear in the world. Thus, 100 years passed in a hurry. Feng Zichen and Chang'e finally woke up from their enlightenment. The two looked at each other and smiled. They put on their clothes and walked out hand in hand. However, as soon as Feng Zichen walked out of his bedroom, he sensed that the fate of the human race seemed to be in danger. It suddenly trembled violently and appeared in the sky above the human Dao imperial court. At this time, if the mortals looked up, they would see a blazing torch fire suddenly appear in the sky above the human Dao imperial court. The torch fire was incomparably hot and enveloped in 5-colored light. It landed in the sky above the human Dao imperial court like the sun, shining brightly and illuminating the entire human race. Countless images of the human race appeared in the fire, playing out the history of the human race one after another. This was the history of the human race. Everything that had happened since the birth of the human race had been recorded by the fate of the human race. Around the fire and in the 5-colored light, the images of the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, and qilin appeared from time to time. They were the strongest allies of the human race. The 5-colored light was a manifestation of the fates of the 5 connate races. They surrounded the torch fire, representing their strongest friendship with the human race. Look, our fates are connected and inseparable. We must advance and retreat together. That's the torch fire. It's the fates of the human race. Why did he suddenly appear? Did something happen to the human race? The young people might not recognize the origin of the torch fire, but many of the older generation had witnessed the birth of the human race's fate with their own eyes. How could they not recognize him? The fates of the human race wouldn't manifest for no reason. His appearance must be accompanied by a major event. And this major event, it could be good or bad. Everything was possible. For a time, the human race was in a state of panic. They didn't know what had happened. Some of the older generation went straight to the human emperor's palace, wanting to get an answer from the human emperor. However, before they could reach the palace, the torch fire suddenly moved. He grew bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, he had expanded by tens of thousands of times and was about to blot out the sky. Boom! Then, with a boom, a huge beam of light shot out of the torch fire and exploded in the air. It turned into tiny torch fire that fell into the human territory below. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.